I'll shoot straight with you. When I signed up for this paranormal PhD program, I did not picture myself freezing my tail off, crouched behind a gravestone, waiting on a dead guy. But here I am, because this sickening curiosity is a nasty little habit I just can't seem to kick. Which explains why an ex-agoraphobe is now willing to hang out in a graveyard trying to perv on spirits. Because there's nothing I wouldn't do for a good story. And a good story? Well, that's exactly what you're about to get. Despite having gone to 7 high schools in 7 years, always moving mid-semester, and being a ghost in the yearbooks, forgotten before the ink had even dried, I'd always romanticized higher education. You know, the college years. But I was not about to waste another near decade of my life chasing letters after my name like some doe-eyed academic. No, I had a real plan. 10 days or less to pull off the impossible, to get my bachelor's, master's, and a cute little PhD. And I was going to do it all at one of the most prestigious institutes for the paranormal this side of the grave. Whatever the hell that means. It all started at the Institute of Metaphysical Humanistic Science School. A mouthful of a name for a place that only exists on a server. And as of right now, I've just registered for the full course load. I'm set to become a PhD, majoring in paranormal activity, minoring in Sasquatch. That's right, I'm becoming a UFO identifying, ghost whispering, cryptid hunting, Doc of the Damned. And I'm doing it all in 10 days, even if it kills me. And hell, maybe even after that. So, you want to be a wizard? Hell, so do I. I always hoped maybe I had a little something, a flicker of the uncanny, a spark of the extra normal, a dash of the I'm not like other girls. Every week or so, I give it the old Matilda try. I stare down a coffee mug or whatever's lying around like it has some secrets it's gonna cough up, expecting it to start levitating if I just squint hard enough. Doesn't hurt to try. Well, doesn't hurt me anyway. That's Angus MacDonald, named after the greatest detective that was ever written into existence. But to me, he's just Goose. Unfortunately, despite all my years of trying to flip a napkin with my mind, so far, I got nothing. Nothing but a stack of napkins. Recently, I'd been investigating a so-called psychic medium, pulling on a thread that had been irritating me for years now when I came across a school, an institute that could teach you how to hone your own psychic ability, connect to whatever power lies dormant inside all of our minds. Clicked that link so fast it blew the hair right off my head. But once I started digging into the institute, I realized they taught a hell of a lot more than that. And one of the programs taught about everything you've never thought would be in a university curriculum. Aliens, big feet, ghosts, psychic powers, and most terrifyingly, public speaking. And not only that, at the end of it, you got a bona fide PhD. My curiosity was piquing hard, and I was ready to slide a blank check across the table, but the price tag was putting me off. I'd always heard about how education was expensive, and now I was finally seeing it with my own eyes. Yes, I was always chasing a story, but was $1,000 really worth it for potential psychic powers and a PhD? I guess that depends. How much is annoying people with, actually it's Dr. Kaelin Conrad worth to me? Honestly, a lot. But I'm not willing to spend my rent money on a doctorate if it's just a piece of paper. I needed to know that this was legit, the real deal. No, I didn't need it to be like Ivy League real. I just wanted the kind of real where my credit card reads Dr. Kaelin Conrad in embossed, undeniable letters. That kind of real. Turns out, it's legit. Because America, God rest her soul, has a love for loopholes, especially when it comes to religion. Down in the swamplands of Florida, if you slap a church sticker on your school and teach a few heavenly subjects, the state leaves you be. No oversight, no red tape, just ghosts, aliens, and degrees. Enter Dr. Douglas R. Kelly, a hypnotist, psychic, and ecclesiastical entrepreneur that should really consider dropping the middle initial from his bio. He's got his own church, and thanks to Florida law, he can grant all the metaphysical credentials you could ever dream of. It's all above board. So when this is all said and done, I'll have more than just arcane knowledge. I'll have a PhD, and also a badge. I'll be a certified paranormal investigator, walking the thin, translucent line between this world and the next. And maybe, just maybe, I'll finally move that damn goose with my mind. The application process is pretty easy. It's like, what's your name? What's your address? Of the two genders, which are you today? I just aced the character creation screen, and now I'm picking my class. Or classes. I'm going to be majoring in ghosts, psychics, and aliens. Minoring in Bigfoot, naturally. And I've applied. I was accepted in 16 minutes. The process is not rigorous. The Institute's all online. No brass plates, no mahogany doors, no campus full of stoner guys playing shirtless hacky sack like I always dreamed. Just pixels, promises, and a website that looked like it was from 2001. But me? I'm a glutton for aesthetics and atmosphere, and this simply wouldn't do. So I printed that acceptance letter crisp and official and had a friend slide it back under my door. I needed the illusion, the ceremony, the rite of passage, something to make it feel real, like I earned this, by paying $1,000 for it. I emptied my wallet and handed over the rent money, every last cent of it. Call it a gamble, call it a death wish, call it women's intuition. I'm half woman on my mother's side, but I had to believe this was going to be worth it. I was going to be a ghost doctor, damn it, and maybe I'd even get some views along the way. And just like that, tomorrow wasn't just any other day. It was day one at Paranormal U. Now, I've always been a bit peculiar. The doc slapped it with a label, OCD. My friends, they said it was Virgo coded, whatever the hell that means. I think I'm just cursed with a hunger to bring order to chaos. And the night before school starts, that's always been holy to me. It was a ritual, a line drawn in the sand between what was and what's coming next. So I did what I've always done. I put on some tunes, and I got to work organizing. Based on the syllabus, the course would be kind of all over the place, so I broke it down into digestible chunks that fit neatly into a semester-long hit list, clear, orderly, and each subject just begging to be taken out, one at a time. Paranormal 101, Skeptics and Critical Thinking, Ghosts, Psychic Powers, Aliens, Cryptozoology, Paranormal Investigations, and finally, the doctoral dissertation. Next step, as a lover of university-branded merch, I needed a little uniform. That much was clear. The kind of thing you'd expect from an institute worth its salt. But this place, they didn't offer one. And if they had, well, I'm not sure I would have worn it. Frankly, their branding is hideous. And worse, it's under copyright. So I had to get creative. I quickly built a satire institute, the IMHS School. Same initials, a lot more charm. The difference is unbelievable. If anyone asks you, you tell them I'm a student at the Institute of Magical Logical Human School. Yeah, I know. The name's a mouthful, and not a satisfying one, but it has its charm, and it's not like the original is any tastier on your tongue. From there, I cooked up a logo, sharp and slick, and it all came together with the help of a cricket who owed me a favor. The kind of favor that doesn't come without strings. Back when I was a kid, school was just a place they sent you to keep you off the streets. But this time, I was taking it seriously. I even paid the extra cash for a bona fide student card. And I needed to make space on the wall for all the various awards and accolades I was sure to earn. I mean, what's the point of being a doctor if every person who passes through your life doesn't know about it? And now I was ready, house prepped, brain lubed, and ready to be filled with Douglas's wisdom. I felt like a kid on Christmas Eve, wanting to get into bed as soon as possible so the morning would arrive sooner. So I slithered into bed with the goose and tried to sleep. Going back a moment while I was digging into the institute, I had accidentally stumbled across a curious little detail. Dr. Douglas R. Kelly had a weekly radio show. So I tuned in and took the professor to bed with me, strictly professionally. I'm an insomniac by trade, and tonight was no different. Tomorrow was day one, Paranormal 101, and I was so excited to get started that I found it difficult to relax my mind. Eventually, though, the static cleared. I slipped off into that other place, the one behind your eyelids and just past the veil. And all I had to tether me to this side of reality was the voice of my new professor. First day of school. I woke up exhausted, as per usual, but exhilarated, which was not, and I had most of a plan for how I was going to do this. Here's my strategy for this little piece of journalism. I'm taking you through this with me, degree by degree, day by day. I learn, so do you. That's the deal. To keep this video cleaner than the syllabus, I'm going to assign each subject to a day, even though sometimes I'll be doing more than one or it'll stretch between two. But the length of time I spend on it altogether, totally accurate. And I'm getting it all on film. Every cursed minute of this PhD grind, from blank page to burnout. And as of right now, all the episodes are available to members on my Patreon and YouTube community. Check it out if you're into that sort of thing. If we're done with the foreplay, I'd really like to get to the payoff. So let's crack open a nice, cold textbook and get started, because I, for one, am beyond ready for Paranormal 101. I scrolled through the website, which appeared to have been created around the time of the Great Flood, and tried to get used to the interface. Clicked around, found where I'd look up my grades, saw a long list of the previous graduates and what their doctorates were in. I was going to be on that list in less than 10 days. It wasn't a prestigious position, of course, but the idea definitely tickled my humors a bit. I just opened up the first course, and I don't know about any of the bachelor's courses you all took, but I'm going to assume it's standard for the introductory course to insist upon itself that it's entirely on the up and up and ends in a very real degree. Super legit. Cap and gown at the end and everything, if you buy them yourself, but not from him. Maybe I'm wrong about the average bachelor's program, but what I can say is that this course absolutely started that way. And if it wasn't clear, 95% of the coursework is written by the headmaster, Dumbledug himself. Now, I don't want to bore you with lots of random text on the screen, and I'd like to avoid copyright harassment, so I've made a puppet to read out any tiny and extremely fair use snippets from the course. Like the following, where Dr. Douglas discusses how incredibly real the real degrees he really offers really are.
This degree program is not meant to be a cakewalk. It is meant to challenge you as a professional and as a human being. It is a big step up from traditional paranormal certification programs, because just about anyone can take and pass those.
Well, I'm just about anyone, always have been. And I would be pretty upset if it turned out I paid this much money to enter a silly little cakewalk. So let's see how it goes. And don't mind the wizard outfit. I was a bit faded last night when I went full Geppetto.
Many students are excited to begin their IMHS studies and share that excitement with family and friends, only to be marginalized and denigrated by comments such as, "That's not a real doctoral degree," or similar. Nothing could be further from the truth.
He breaks it up like this. There are secular and non-secular degrees, and while different, they're both equally valid and should not be compared, even though that's comparing them. He asks me, which is better?
An apple or an orange? A car or a pickup truck? A train or a plane? The truth is, they are neither better nor worse. They are just different and used for different purposes.
Number 1, apple, car, train. Number 2, keep an eye out for the whirring undercurrent of disdain that runs through this coursework when it comes to science, skepticism, and academics. It's going to come up later. A lot. In my opinion, Douglas seems to have a bit of a grudge against people with, let's say, non-secular PhDs.
Having an academic PhD is not a guarantee of intelligence, common sense, or even scientific prowess. It simply means they jump through the often outlandish hoops required by the sometimes snooty academic community.
He's right about one thing, he goes on to say. He insists that worrying too much about what the critics say, that'll tie your hands behind your back when you're trying to sharpen your craft. But something about this doesn't sit right in my chest. The way it painted friends and family, the concerned types who just want to know if this paranormal PhD has any meat on its bones, it treated them like a problem to be ignored. The unreasonable people who are marginalizing and denigrating these students by voicing concerns. And then, that's compounded by the wholly unnecessary and unprofessional sweet nothings the professor writes, describing how rare and special the student is.
You, however, are among the comparatively few who are not satisfied with simply eking out a day-to-day existence and ignoring the great wonder and awe that is all around us.
Oof. I'm not saying it's a cult, because it's not a cult at all. I know cults. I joined one last year. This ain't that. I truly believe Dr. Douglas has good intentions. He just doesn't strike me as the type looking to reel in lost souls or build an army of glassy-eyed disciples. But good intentions don't always pave the cleanest roads, and I can't shake the feeling that, whether he means to or not, he's drawing lines in the sand. Folks who raise a brow at this so-called degree, they get cast as the enemy, the doubters, the ones who just don't get it. Suddenly, loved ones turn into villains, and concern gets dressed up as prejudice. I won't say that it's manipulation, but it sure as hell walks right up to the edge of it. The course wants me to do a little introspection here. If I'm going to focus on doing what I want to do, I should probably know why I want to do it. Study metaphysics, the paranormal, or like aliens. And it asks me that outright. And I have an answer for that. It's the kind of genuine answer that feels a little disingenuous. But let's lay it out there. Yes, I wanted the scoop, the story. Hell, I wanted the title. But that's not all of it. I truly would love to live in the world of the supernatural. See, I want to believe. Not in politicians or fairy tales, but in something bigger. A world where the dead aren't just cold memories, but are waiting on the other side. So close that if you just listen hard enough, you can still hear them. I want that more than I care to admit. I'd trade a hell of a lot to know that the ones I lost are still out there, somewhere, waiting for me. Only problem is, I can't quite sell myself the lie. I never could. I was raised with Sunday sermons and polished promises, souls, heaven, hell, but none of it ever stuck. Still, if there was even a sliver of a shot that this metaphysics racket could crack open my skull and pour in some cosmic insight, well, that'd be worth the ticket price. Real magic? I'd bleed for that. Who wouldn't? There's a reason I spent my teenage years dancing under the moon, calling myself Wiccan or a witch. I guess things have kind of come full circle. But it's more than that. Why am I really digging into metaphysics? Simple. You can't fight what you don't understand. And you cannot help people get out of pseudoscientific ideologies unless you understand both their motivations and the ideologies themselves. And one of the reasons I find metaphysical claims so necessary to know how to combat is that historically, they've been used to prey on the vulnerable.
I would tell her that I love her and I miss her.
A tearful plea from the mother of a missing teen. But when the case made national news, the Houston parents say they became inundated with calls from so-called psychic detectives. They say some even showed up at their front door, promising their psychic visions could help bring Allie home.
He guaranteed me that he'd find Allie in 3 days.
It's a dirty little world out there, and she sure as hell ain't getting any cleaner. And I've seen enough to know one thing for sure. Metaphysical claims aren't always just harmless talk over a candlelit table full of cards. It's not always just your eccentric Aunt Tabitha rambling on about what the lines on your palm mean or drawing up your birth chart. And it's not always just innocent Silver Ravenwolf instructing impressionable teenagers to practice witchcraft in secret and lie to their parents. No, unlike that, it's often dangerous, predatory. I've watched a grieving mother get fed lies by some 2-bit mystic, told her missing kid was gone, murdered even, while that child was still out there, alive, scared, waiting for someone to give a damn and come looking. I've seen faith healers do their dance, swearing the cancer's gone, just gone, all while the clock ticks and the tumor keeps ticking too, chewing through flesh, bone, time, and whatever hope's left. See, that's the heart of it. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because there's a whole market in pain and business is booming. People are exploiting the vulnerable to line their own pockets, cashing in on lives that aren't theirs to sell. And every time there's a reason. There's always a reason, an excuse, a justification, and this particular situation is no different.
Bear in mind that it is moral and ethical for you to benefit from your hard work, provided you don't harm others. Unlike many religious traditions, metaphysics is not about endless self-sacrifice without seeing any hard and fast benefits. Everything we do must be win-win.
Now, this is probably true for Douglas, but he's no fool. He must know that sometimes the game is being played dirty, knows that there are bad apples rolling around the orchard.
I will concede that there are some in the metaphysical community whose beliefs are far out on the fringe and hang precariously suspended on pure speculation where the slightest poke brings them crashing down. This is why it is imperative that the metaphysical beliefs you choose are grounded in some type of rational thought.
Early on, the course states that science, by way of objectivity, has become close-minded to new possibilities, that it's become the very thing it never wanted to be, narrow-minded. And how true. When I used to work with this girl named Science, I found her very close-minded. She was not open to the reviews of her peers, and she certainly would never change her opinion based on new information.
Science is quick to discredit the mind's demonstrable ability for psychic phenomena, while at the same time theorizing and inferring that some unseeable, undetectable, unmeasurable, and atomless stuff known as dark matter and dark energy exists, making up an astounding 95% of the universe. Citation: Wikipedia, dark matter. Sometimes what science accepts has more to do with what is currently fashionable than what may or may not make rational sense.
The mind's demonstrable ability for psychic phenomena. Wouldn't mind seeing that demonstration myself. Sounds unbelievable. And it is. There are very many moments throughout this course where the professor references compelling evidence for the paranormal. There are extremely few where he even attempts to provide any. But I'll give you an example of his version of compelling evidence. Remember September 11th? Of course you remember September 11th. We never forget. Well, in the expert opinion of the professor, something unbelievable happened that day. And I'm not just talking about the twins taking the dive. Enter Dr. Roger D. Nelson, director of the Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University. Roger had set up machines all around the world which generated random numbers and fed them back to a computer at Princeton. Roger hypothesized he could prove that all of humanity's minds were linked by showing that at times of mass emotion, the numbers would become less random. Imagine it this way. You program machines all around the world to flip a coin. 5 out of 10 times, it's heads. 5 out of 10 times, it's tails, roughly. And this happens day in, day out, until one day, all around the world, it doesn't. Something changes. And that day is September 11th, 2001. Pretty spooky stuff, right? I even thought about having goosebumps while investigating it. That is, until I found out that this anomalous event actually started 4 to 5 hours before a single plane had hit, and there was nothing for anyone to be psychically reacting to. Also, if you were to do a smidge of research, you'll find that Roger himself has said that the data is not solid enough for global consciousness to be said to exist at all. It's not possible, for example, to look at the data and predict with any accuracy what the machines may be responding to. But even more damningly, these machines failed to go off for plenty of other catastrophic events. Run these machines long enough and eventually it was bound to go off at some point on the day of something of note. But none of this seems to worry Douglas, who says that
this research offers compelling evidence that we as a global human family, a global consciousness, are connected in ways that we may have not been aware of up until now. This research appears to scientifically confirm what many of the ancient mystics have said, namely, our thoughts have an effect on reality.
Wow, I've never heard of that before. That's unbelievable. Not to the professor, though, who really seems to believe that the human mind is nearly all-powerful. Now, Dr. Doug says belief is the most powerful force in the universe. And to back that up, he tells a tale about a man named Morris E. Goodman. Folks called him the Miracle Man, and not for nothing. One day, Morris took his plane up into the sky and brought it down in a heap of twisted metal. When the smoke cleared, he wasn't walking away. Hell, he wasn't even breathing on his own. The crash had left him paralyzed, communicating only through blinks. As Douglas tells it, the doctors told Morris he would be like this forever. But they underestimated
the incredible power of Morris's human spirit. You see, Morris also had his mind. Communicating by blinking his eyes, he told his doctors that he would walk out of the hospital by Christmas. Sure enough, 8 months later, he did just that.
Impressive, to be sure, and I'm glad Morris was able to regain his autonomy. We all deserve that, at the very least, despite what many people in powerful places would have you believe. Thing is, Douglas spun the tale like he was Rumpelstiltskin spinning gold out of hay. Spoilers, it's mind over matter. He tells it as if Morris pulled himself out of that chair by sheer force of will alone, like it was some kind of medical miracle. But I've been around long enough to know medical miracles usually come with a scalpel and a stack of medical bills. So I looked into it. And it seems that even a tough guy like him needed a little help from the Whitecoats. The docs pulled off a high-stakes operation that gave him a fighting chance. Then came the long haul, months and months of grinding physio. Yeah, Morris had the heart, mostly because the doctors were able to find a match. But science and the support of several medical teams were his partners in that comeback. And there's something sinister behind this happy ending being turned into a tale of the power of the mind. Because what about the folks who never walk again? What's Douglas implying about them? That they didn't want it badly enough? That their spirit just didn't measure up? No, I don't buy it. Sometimes the cards are just dealt crooked, and no matter how hard you play the game, you lose. Douglas goes on for a while about what metaphysics is or isn't, what this degree program is or isn't, and how valid both metaphysics and the degree program are. It makes up the bulk of the intro to the program, and I will not bore you with the details. I won't drag you through the intellectual swamp. You came here for the ghosts, the aliens, maybe a giant squirrel home invader or two. So let's cut to the chase. If you're itching for every dry morsel of academic preamble, you'll find it tucked away on my Patreon or behind the velvet rope for YouTube members. The course is coming to a close, and Douglas lays out 9 commandments of his own to increase the vibrational level of humanity, a sentence that makes complete sense and isn't something a cult leader would also definitely say. He claims that these principles comprise about the healthiest spiritual philosophy on the planet and will enhance anyone's life and relationships. Which, bold claim. The rules are simple, see? Real black and white stuff in a world that usually preferred gray. Do good. Don't do bad. We make the mess, us humans, and we damn well better clean it up, starting with yourself. I was beginning to worry that Dr. Douglas R. Kelly was like a wizard Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, but without the blood-stained mouth from chewing on raw shank. Probably. The point of these 9 principles seems to be for humanity to get back to a place where we're able to connect to our higher selves, the place where moments of clarity and epiphanies come from, that feeling in our gut that tells us something we ought not to know. Now, personally, I really don't like it when it sounds like someone is telling me to trust my gut. My gut? Really? That thing is full of literal shit. But I'll follow his lead on this and try to connect to it, bridge my higher consciousness to my lizard brain. And luckily, he's got just the exercise for that.
In order to develop a better connection to your higher self, you must think of it as a very real part of who you are, a part of your very own consciousness. Let me share a visualization. I call it my soul light visualization.
I have no beef with meditation or taking 5 to breathe like you mean it, so when the invitation came, I didn't balk. I was game. His instructions were as follows. Get comfy. Shut your stupid little eyes. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Picture a glowing sphere above your head. No, not the sun, a different glowing sphere. Now, see its tentacles, which it has for some reason, stretch out in all directions and pull in energy and pour it into you. Take it in you, take it so that it fills you up, let you fill with it, and then let it flow through you into the ground. So I did. And, well, I definitely felt calmer. It was nice, though, this breathing, this stillness, with or without the cosmic nonsense of soul tentacles siphoning stardust and divine juice from the void. I'd almost made it through the first day and the first course, and now all that was left was to do the final exam, which felt a little quick. If this was one of a handful of courses and I'd done it in a day, I was either a genius or the courses were a bit of a cakewalk. And I didn't enroll in wizard school for the cake, and I most certainly didn't enroll for any walking. Douglas had made it extremely apparent that the exams were all open book, and was nice enough to tell people how to use the find function in a PDF. I guess he wasn't the kind of guy who cared if you remembered what he said, just that you remembered where to find it. This exam is underwhelming. We have questions like, a metaphysical degree is a real degree, true or false? I'm answering with his taste in mind, not mine, and not science's. I think this is the first time I've noticed that the professor, he has a sense of humor, one that toes the line between satire and malpractice. It's edgy, But I like that. Hell, I respect it.
Diversity among humanity is, select one, an evolutionary mistake, not the way God intended it, an evolutionary constant, only valid among heterosexuals.
Looks like Douglas enjoys a shitpost as much as the next shit wizard. And I like that. To nobody's surprise, I aced the damn thing, perfect score, completed the course with honors, in hours, just how I am. You know that if you'd seen the movie based on my life, with honors in hours. I was starting to suspect that this gig was going to be a breeze. Hell, I probably wouldn't even need the full 10 days. Like the big guy upstairs carving out the world, I figured I'd earn myself a little bit of time at the end just to kick back and admire the mess I'd just made. I had sunk 5 hours into the first day at the Institute for the Paranormal, and I needed a little time to center myself in this reality. I tried to disconnect for the night, I swear I did, but the professor's words kept reverberating through my skull. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't shake them.
Many students share that excitement with family and friends, only to be marginalized and denigrated by comments such as, "That's not a real doctoral degree."
It stuck with me. I couldn't help but wonder how many dinners had gone cold, how many calls went unanswered, how many lives had been affected by the idea that challenging the validity of his institute was victimization. If you hadn't noticed, I tend to get a little fixated while working a case. It's a dirty little trick my mind plays when you're knee-deep in something that don't make sense. You latch on, obsess. Well, I do. So I caved. I always do. Willpower's never been my strong suit. I couldn't disconnect. So that night, it was just me and Douglas again, his voice crackling through the radio like a ghost who refused to just stay dead. I let him talk me to sleep as long as it took. And as the hours passed, I found myself wide awake, poking holes in his logic, just as often as I found myself nodding along with it. I was surprised. When I started this, I didn't know what I was walking into. Maybe I expected nothing. Maybe I was hoping for something more. I don't know. But whatever it was I thought I'd find, sure as hell wasn't this. I came to the same way I went under. Dead tired and worn thin with Douglas's voice in the back and foreground of my mind. But still, I was itching to hit the ground running. I rinsed off the night before and poured a couple of shots of some bitter blend down my throat, realized I should have made 9 more branded shirts, settled for one of my other 12 identical black teas, and cracked the books. I was desperate to know what a psychic hypnotist, who may or may not believe in 4-foot-tall alien squirrels, had to say about critical thinking. I'd even made a bet with myself that just like the day before, I'd find myself in a mix of awe and disappointment. I was right. I won that bet. But the sucker I was up against, that was me. So chalk it up as a win and a loss, all in one, like there was no point in making the stupid bet in the first place. And as for the giant alien squirrels, we'll get there. As I started reading through the course, it was very clear to me that the professor has a better understanding of what critical thinking is and how it works than most people you'll run into in your day-to-day. Whether he utilizes it himself, that's another story. But you know what they say, those who can't do, teach. And those who can't teach, don't. He kicks things off with the basics, and takes a lot of care to explain Occam's razor, also known as the law of parsimony. Essentially, Occam's razor is this: when faced with competing explanations for the same phenomenon, the simplest is likely the correct one. Now, Occam's razor is not a hard and fast rule, but a philosophical tool for shaving off unlikely explanations. You hear sounds on your roof? They sound like squirrels running around? Perhaps the same ones you see in your yard every day? And you wonder, what could it be? It could be squirrels, but maybe it's the government. And they're pretending to be squirrels to lull you into a false sense of security before they strike. One of these is much more complicated, involved, and requires a Mormon's dozen worth of unplausible events coming to pass to make this even remotely possible. If it sounds like squirrels on the roof, it's probably not Santa Claus's reindeer. Douglas often refers to it as the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Now, he didn't come up with it, and he's not exactly using it right. He lays out the importance of this kind of critical thinking and reasoning quite plainly, and he lays it on thick. And good on him. If there's one thing people taking this program should have drilled into their brains, it's how to use them. He goes over some of the other necessary building blocks to understanding how best to think. And you can't blame the guy for starting with the basics. In this day and age, meeting someone, even running their brain on the bare bones essentials, seems to be a bit of a luxury. So the Institute drilling into people's heads the distinction between inductive and deductive reasoning, net positive. I'm here for it. I'm going to break this down because it's going to be coming up a lot. Deductive reasoning is the process of drawing valid inferences. An inference is valid if its conclusion follows logically from its premises, meaning that if the logic holds, the conclusion follows suit, clean and sharp, no guesswork, no hunches. It's the truth. Like this. If all A are B and C is equal to A, then logic follows that C is equal to B. You know what? Let's do this in my mind palace. I spent all that time last night in the tub tinkering together this little mental contraption to help us work out problems as they crop up. So where's that formula? Here we go. If all A are B and C is equal to A, then C is equal to B. Let's plug some data into this. If all birds lay eggs and pigeons are birds, then pigeons procreate by laying eggs. But with inductive reasoning, if the premises are true, yes, the conclusion is also likely to be true, but not necessarily. The professor offers us this example of inductive reasoning.
Socrates was Greek. Premise. Many Greeks eat fish. Premise. Socrates ate fish. Conclusion.
In this case, while both premises are true, the conclusion isn't sound. Probability is not necessarily reality, because we don't know what he ate. Maybe the guy couldn't stand fish. Maybe he's one of those plant-munching types like me, living off lentils and wine. Hell, for all I know, he dined like a dung beetle, feasting on crap and calling it dinner. Wouldn't be the first philosopher to spit shit when he talked. The only thing we know he ate for sure was hemlock, which is a gorgeous name for an insufferable child. Now, that's not to say that inductive reasoning has no place, but it's important to remember that correlation does not equal causation. And Douglas seems to know that. But knowing something to be true and leading your life with that knowledge are not the same thing. We go on and on about how to think through problems logically for a while, and the doc offers us some brain teasers to get our minds into the habit of taking apart a statement and examining each part of it before we come to a conclusion. And honestly, I like it. I have fun.
How can you throw a ball so that it goes a short distance, comes to a total stop, reverses its motion, and then goes the opposite way? You are not allowed to bounce it against anything, hit it with anything, or tie it to anything.
You throw it up, Professor. Like me the morning after polishing off a bottle of vodka to my face.
That attorney is my brother, testified the accountant. But the attorney testified he didn't have a brother. Who is lying?
Nobody is lying, Doc. It's 2025. Women won the right to math decades ago. And they can be accountants now, just like everybody else. I don't know why anyone would want that gig, but I'm glad someone does. Because I do not. Now, while the Institute seems to really push critical thinking, wears it like a badge of honor, it also seems to have endless disdain for those who truly think critically, rationally, who prioritize a scientific mode of thought.
Debunkers and hardcore skeptics.
That word, debunker, Douglas says it like it's something he's stepped in. You can hear the venom behind his teeth when he uses it, like a slur. Throughout the course, a fuzzy line is drawn in the sand between skeptic and debunker, with skeptical meaning to question and debunk meaning to expose while ridiculing, which isn't necessarily wrong. But the coursework insists that it's aligned with skepticism, which it deems healthy, as being open-minded and looking for the truth. But debunking is to come in with preconceived notions and trying to prove those correct, regardless of any evidence that points in the other direction, which is not what debunking is. He compares debunkers to religionists, saying that they rely on faith and belief, not evidence. His source on this? The Nobel and Pulitzer Award unwinning book, Cryptozoology, Science and Speculation by Chad Armand. And the quote it contains by Bertrand Russell.
Skepticism, while logically impeccable, is psychologically impossible. And there is an element of frivolous insincerity in any philosophy which pretends to accept it.
Arment goes on to say,
Skepticism is a belief-driven philosophy creating the illusion of scientific neutrality while adopting practices of disbelief. Skepticism is not the halfway mark between belief and disbelief. Belief and disbelief are two sides of the same coin. Those who hold to a philosophy of disbelief have no intellectual impetus to investigate anything, which impedes scientific progress.
The doc follows us up with his own rant about how skeptics are the real close-minded ones.
Hardcore skeptics and disbelievers still believe in something, namely, the opposite of the believers. It often impassions me when I watch a documentary or read a book in which the current parade of skeptics, actually debunkers, appear on cue to dismiss any compelling evidence out of hand, saying in effect, "No, it didn't happen. These people are kooks. It was simply their imaginations or mass hysteria or mass delusion, hallucination, etc." They often speak with such cocky authority that they almost seem believable. They fancy themselves as open-minded and objective, but they are the very epitome of what they claim they are not, closed-minded.
Raking skeptics over the coals under the guise of only attacking those who are hardcore, he quotes Stanton Friedman, a ufologist, and yes, that's what they actually call themselves, who lays out what he believes to be the debunker's modus operandi.
What the public doesn't know, I won't tell them. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. If one can't attack the data, attack the people. It is easier. Do one's research by proclamation. Investigation is too much trouble.
Pretty immediately, I noticed something curious. Stanton Friedman is a bit of a hypocrite. He's claiming skeptics attack the people, not their arguments, but he's not actually attacking the arguments that the skeptics are putting forward. He's attacking them personally, calling the skeptics lazy, narrow-minded, said they were peddling half-truths while stuffing full truths in locked drawers. The kind of talk that stinks of projection, if you ask me. And you're here, so you did. And all this, it was riding shotgun with a narrative soaked in paranoia, painting the cautious folks, the ones asking questions about the validity of this institute, as villains in the lives of the truth-seeking, starry-eyed students. Suddenly, voicing worries wasn't just a crime of concern, it was a sin of dishonesty, as if disagreeing meant you were hiding something. Ugly business. Real ugly. And while Douglas admits that some, even many, reports of the anomalous or paranormal can be explained in more other mundane ways, he insists that that isn't always the case. For instance, say you have poltergeist activity in your home. You might think that implies you're being haunted by some malevolent spirit. There's another option, one that's more in line with what we know about reality. Occam's razor. Is it a malevolent spirit? Not likely. Not likely at all. According to Douglas, most likely, it's a magic little girl on her period.
All the indications are that in the vast majority of the few cases that arise, poltergeists are not spirits or ghosts at all, but rather unconscious psychokinetic activity that originates with a human agent. In many cases, the agent is an adolescent girl going through hormonal changes, but this is not the only cause, nor are adolescent girls the only source.
And there you have it. Menstruation is witchcraft. And that's why we need to fight for better sex education in the school systems, because kids just aren't learning these things anymore. Hard to see why anyone would be skeptical or critical of a reasonable, evidence-based belief like that. After making my way through this course, I've come to the opinion that Douglas is under the belief that he follows the KISS principle, but is often following what I've coined as the Lick principle. Let's ignore common knowledge. It goes, wherever there is an opportunity to explain an anomalous event in a mundane and nearly irrefutable way with nothing more than common knowledge, simply ignore that entirely. If it's not interesting or there's no drama in it, then you just don't need that kind of energy, especially when trying to prove something scientifically. To demonstrate both the licking and Daddy Douglas's love of it, I'll stop edging you with the giant alien squirrels. Buckle the hell up, because the doc has put my brain through the ringer throughout this course, and yours is about to be squeezed tight too. So he tells a story from his own personal case files where a seasoned paranormal researcher, although we never find out what spices Douglas used to season her or for what reason, reports to him that as a child, she once saw several giant squirrels, roughly 4 feet tall, standing around her bed in a dream. Remember that it was a dream, because that's going to be important later. For me, not for Douglas. When she woke up, the squirrels left, and she was able to move her eyes, but not her body. Coincidentally, there were also squirrels that she could hear walking around on her roof, although it obviously could have been a murder of Rudolph's. Now, I know what you're probably thinking the most likely explanation is, but I can promise you, whatever way you're thinking, it's not critically. I'll let Douglas explain for himself.
If all I knew was cryptozoology, I might be inclined to see this as a possible cryptozoological event involving a heretofore undiscovered species of giant squirrels.
It's all falling into place. Of course, that place is nowhere near this place.
On the other hand, if all I knew was paranormal science, I might be inclined to see this as ghost activity.
Oh, of course. Ghost squirrels.
Yet further, if I was a psychologist, I might see this as a case of sleep paralysis, or simply a child's overactive imagination.
You might, yeah. Maybe even if you weren't a psychologist. Maybe even just literally everyone who heard this story and didn't have their head in the clouds.
However, my knowledge and training in all of these fields, as well as in alien abduction phenomena, told me that this incident had all the earmarks of an alien abduction.
This is Douglas's true scientific method. Keep it stupid, stupid.
Had I not been trained in these various disciplines, I could have easily chased the wrong path, resulting in wasted time and the potential for a hit to my credibility as a researcher.
Yes, you easily could have reached the wrong conclusion, and I could see how, say, assuming something wildly unrealistic could affect your credibility as a critical thinking, reasoned investigator. It sure would have been a damn shame if you had identified the 4-foot squirrels as a dream within the first 5 seconds of the story, only to have people later say, this isn't the kooky explanation we expect from you. See, for me, when a tale kicks off with, I saw something unbelievable, and then sucker punches you with, and then I woke up, well, call me old-fashioned, but I'd say we're squarely in dream territory. Now, let's toss this into the contraption and see what kind of racket it makes. If all A are B, and C is equal to A, then C is equal to B. If you see 4-foot-tall squirrels in your sleep, and the things we see in our sleep are called dreams, then seeing the 4-foot-tall squirrels in your sleep was a dream. But no, not to the doc. In his world, Occam's razor don't cut clean, and the simplest answer is either psychic schoolgirls or alien squirrels on stilts. Maybe even both. A psychic schoolgirl alien on stilts. Think about it. He hasn't. Okay, so if all A are B and C is equal to A, and then C is equal to B, if you see 4-foot-tall squirrels in your sleep, and the things we see in our sleep are called dreams, then seeing the 4-foot-tall squirrels in your sleep was indicative of an alien abduction? It's all very silly, ridiculous even. One might even go as far as to say nonsensical. But when someone brings up 4-foot-tall giant alien squirrels and the skeptics laugh, that's just proof, he says, of how rotten they are. Mock a man for beliefs built on compelling evidence? Who would do such a thing? Well, I would. I like to think I played it straight with the professor, given the man his due, fair and square. But this one's off the deep end, swimming laps around reason while reason is drowning. And now I'm the bad guy for pointing out the obvious? For calling a spade, a dream a dream? If that's ridicule, then maybe it's not about me or Douglas. Maybe truth itself's got a mean streak. And it's not alone, because Douglas has one too. The professor goes on to say that
these naysayers are simply negative people who demean the human condition and belittle the plight of witnesses by their thoughtless, inconsiderate, and jaundiced pronouncements.
Jesus Christ. Thoughtless and inconsiderate? As opposed to, say, psychics and mediums who take advantage of and manipulate people through their thoughtless, inconsiderate, and jaundiced pronouncements. The real horrible people are the ones who point out that what they're doing is, yes, thoughtless and inconsiderate, but also cruel and disgusting. This is what I meant by the venom behind his words. Like, he even speaks directly in the textbook to those critical of his beliefs, and potentially the Institute, by saying,
to all the debunkers and hardcore skeptics, I say, until you can prove scientifically that you have a mind, stop bitching.
What do you want them to do, Dougie? Split open their skulls and show you their brain? I think we can scientifically deduce that they have a mind by the fact that they are formulating opinions, even if those opinions fly in the face of everything you believe. And I'm sorry, but why does my actual literal coursework not only have the professor addressing his critics, but he's telling them to stop bitching? Sir, unhinged. He goes on to instruct students who find themselves criticized by skeptics to remember the empowering words of Abraham Lincoln.
If I were to try to read, much less to answer, all the attacks made on me, the shop might as well be closed for any other business. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. If the end brings me out all right, then what is said against me won't matter. If the end brings me out wrong, then 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference.
The bottom line is that many scientists today ignore compelling evidence of the paranormal, including cryptid sightings, with an almost blind faith usually associated with religion.
Listen, I'm entirely open to seeing his compelling information regarding cryptids, which are unproven animals like the Sasquatch, Mothman, or ethical billionaire. If we're going to talk about turning a blind eye to cold, hard facts with a kind of blind faith usually reserved for pews and pulpits, then we better play it straight and look at the whole cast of characters. You shine the spotlight only on one corner of the room, and you miss the shadows creeping in behind you. If we want to talk about ignoring compelling evidence with religious blind faith, I think we should examine all sides of the aisle. Turning the magnifying glass back towards people who believe in the paranormal, I would say a large amount of them, by definition, ignore compelling evidence. A lot of them toss out real evidence like junk mail or unwanted opinions, clinging to their convictions with a devotion that make a preacher's daughter blush. And this isn't comparing their beliefs to some metaphorical religion either. It's the real deal. Their beliefs often tie back to ancient rites and holy books. This is Old Testament adjacent stuff, demons and angels, and the evidence they dismiss is actual evidence, actually ignored with the blind faith usually associated with religion, given that a lot of their beliefs are associated with religion. Actually with religion, not the boogeyman these anti-science people call the religion of science. But hey, science can't really prove a boogeyman doesn't exist, so for all I know, the religion of science is a real, live entity creeping under your bed or living in the closet, like a homosexual or an orphan wizard written by a ghoul. And once again, Douglas has this positioned as an us versus them dynamic, with those critical of his ideology firmly demarcated from us. By this point, I was running low on patience, on curiosity, on the kind of goodwill that keeps a person from flipping the table and walking out into the night, never to be seen again. The professor? He wasn't fooling me. For all his talk, he wore the same smug mask he claimed to despise on those so-called hardcore skeptics and debunkers. The irony was thick and covered in veins pumping hypocrisy through it. Maybe that's why it seems like my patience had dried up by the time he tossed the scientific method out the window like a cigarette butt. He had his own method, called it the true scientific method, the bedrock of his grand idea. True science. Capital T, capital S, capital yikes. Something about those two words capitalized sent shivers down my spine. Alarm bells were going off.
In our efforts to discover whatever truths exist, we as serious researchers must abandon the closed-minded belief systems of mainstream science and return to the true scientific method, which is the open-minded search to discover and explain reality. Whatever that means, and wherever that takes us.
The true science he speaks of? It doesn't need to end with a conclusion that is provable, reproducible, or in any way verifiable. To back up his claims, he cites the 2008 book, Flying Saucers in Science by Stanton Friedman. Jesus, Douglas, you finally provide a citation for your claims, and it's a book called Flying Saucers in Science.
Hardcore skeptics and debunkers are another group who have something to learn from critical thinking. The problem with these so-called experts is that they ignore the mountains of evidence from credible sources that says something is going on, rather than conducting honest research to discover whether that something is caused by some form of supernatural or alien intelligence, or whether it is purely an aspect of the human psyche. They sweep it under the rug by disingenuously and demeaningly assigning such credible witnesses to the ranks of nutjobs. This is not critical thinking. It is irresponsible, dishonest, and lazy.
Once again, Dr. Douglas makes a claim with nothing behind it but smoke and malice. No true skeptic denies that when a paranormal claim is made, that something is going on, that something is happening. It's incredibly unlikely that the thing that's happening is something that's never been proven to have happened before. That the most likely answer is often the correct one. But I love the idea that skeptics are out here being like, sure, I saw the curtain move, but nothing actually happened. Instead of, yes, something happened, a little something called the wind.
Hardcore skeptics and debunkers, disbelievers, are just as guilty as those who take things on faith, true believers, for not thinking critically.
Dr. Douglas R. Kelly has a theory, one that doesn't play nice with the establishment. He implies belief is the culprit, the seed of both the miracles and the madness found in science and religion. Two sides of the same rusted coin, if you asked him. Both strutted around like they held the answers, but when it came to the strange and supernatural, they approached it with their minds padlocked shut. Now, you might wonder about the other kind of scientist, the ones with open minds who might just nod in agreement with the doc when no one's watching. Well, they're gagged by the system, concerned by the cold fear of losing their paycheck, their lab coat cred, or worse, respect from the good old boys in suits upstairs. And to those scientists, he speaks directly.
You may have to play the game, but you don't have to sacrifice your soul. And you never know. Perhaps we'll even have the chance to talk with these good old boys on the other side and see what they believe now.
It's kind of iconic in a textbook to say, maybe we'll see who's right when the scientists who ridicule my belief in ghosts are just dead little ghosts who were wrong. The only good skeptic is a dead skeptic who sends back messages from the afterworld to let me know I was right all along. Throughout the day, Douglas has asked me to watch hours and hours of other people's YouTube videos as part of the curriculum, but I was saving those for when YouTube is meant to be watched, while eating dinner or shaving your head. Didn't seem to matter though, as none of the material from the videos ever seemed to crop up on the exams, so I moved on to finishing mine for the day. It was much like the day before, with questions a pinecone could get right.
Hardcore skepticism and debunking requires excellent critical thinking skills. Select one. True. False. Are you perfect? Select one. I'm perfect at being me. Hell yes. No, because I make mistakes. Nobody is perfect.
There are a few short essay questions, and one of them asked me if I was perfect. The answer? Not a chance. But Douglas was the kind of guy who liked his illusions neat and tidy, so I gave him the line he wanted. I'm perfect in my own way. I submitted my exam, and not long after that, I got a letter from the big man himself. No, not famed cryptid Paul Bunyan. Douglas. And I'd won an award.
Hi, Kaylin. It is my pleasure to present you with the Breakthrough Award for the progress you have made throughout the courses in the IMHS degree program, especially in the area of self-discovery and increased awareness.
Funny thing about perfection, it ain't always about having all the edges polished. Sometimes it's just a matter of picking the right lies. Still, getting noticed feels good, even if the award's got your name on it for a revelation you never really had. But then I noticed the second letter, and this one wasn't as congratulatory in tone.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that you only spent a little over an hour in one course, and it has several hours of videos. You are only cheating yourself by not reviewing all of the study material provided. Please go back and watch the videos.
Oh, crap. Shit.
You can now move on to the next course. It also has several hours of videos. Please watch them all. This also means that you have completed the bachelor's program with the high pass, 95.81%.
Wait. I just got my bachelor's degree?
Your digital bachelor's diploma is attached to this email. I encourage you to celebrate your achievement in some fashion, whether having a graduation party, going out with a loved one or friend, or rewarding yourself in some special and meaningful way.
Now, Douglas wasn't wrong about one thing. I'd earned a night to let loose. By some stroke of luck or fate or intelligent design, I was already throwing a party that evening for a friend's birthday. I wasn't planning to steal the spotlight. It's just not my style. But somehow, maybe through some sixth or seventh sense, the gang could tell I just pulled something off, something big. Not 9/11 big, but perhaps there was something to this collective consciousness stuff after all. After the crowd cleared out, I hit the sack. Didn't even make it to the radio before the dark pulled me under. Tomorrow, I would be climbing into bed with ghosts, spirits, poltergeists, the whole damn roster of non-corporeal things that go bump in the night. But for tonight, except for the gray goose beside me, I had the bed all to myself. I came to like a corpse that forgot to stay down. Everything hurt, and the parts that didn't were just too numb to notice. But hell, the day wasn't going to wait, not even if I asked nicely. I cleared some space in my gut for coffee, lit up the kind of remedy the docs prefer not to prescribe, and let the scalding water strip me down to something that almost passed for human. Almost. I cracked open my books. Today's lesson, the afterlife and everything it had to offer. Ghosts, Geist, and memories of great pain stuck like broken records, doomed to play the same scene over and over again, rippling through time. It probably shouldn't surprise you that Douglas believes in the afterlife and is a follower of the survival hypothesis, which is just the theory that our consciousness survives death in one form or another.
It wasn't until I did extensive research on the matter that I found rational and compelling reasons to believe that we do indeed live on. This segment explores several areas and beliefs concerning death, and offers compelling evidence that we don't actually die at all.
By then, I was down bad, real bad, practically crawling on my hands and knees, whispering for a glimpse of this so-called compelling evidence. I wasn't just asking, I was pleading. Please, sir, may I have some source? And while the reason the doc believed what he did was about to be provided, whether it was evidence, compelling or otherwise, was up for debate. We'll get into the times that the professor claims to have interacted with spirits, but the main evidence for his claims boil down to two phenomena: near-death experiences and shared death experiences.
With the advances in medical science over the last century, more and more people are being resuscitated after having died, and many of them, but not all, have reported strange experiences while they were clinically dead.
According to the textbook, these Lazarus fanboys said that they had had memories of the unexplainable. They floated above their own stiff corpses, or took a one-way trip through the pitch black nothing towards some glowing promise, watched their lives flicker by like a busted film reel, and came face to face with the dearly departed, like some welcoming committee from the great beyond. Some even saw the face of God. Well, they saw someone's face that they associated with whatever God they believed in, if they believed in one. And many of them, after crawling out of the dark, came back changed. They came back with renewed faith, a stronger sense of purpose, sometimes freckles in places they didn't previously have any, the occasional extra finger, or so they say. Well, not the finger part. Strange thing though, no one ever saw a God that didn't already match the one they'd been praying to. Everyone's vision lined up real neat with whatever faith they were holding on to. Funny, ain't it, that death has a way of dressing up in whatever robes you're already expecting. Now, the straight-laced Catholic who cashes in his chips and winds up shaking hands with Thanatos himself, that's the kind of conversation that I'd be interested in hearing about. People see Jesus in toast, which is delicious, but I'm not surprised they see him when they're unconscious.
Skeptics claim that NDEs are caused by biological factors such as oxygen deprivation to the brain as it is dying, hallucinations from medications, or the effects of anesthesia, but they cannot prove these any more than a believer can prove them wrong. As an anomalous researcher myself, I am interested in the truth, but the skeptics are going to have to provide far more compelling arguments to effectively counter the weighty, anecdotal evidence for the veracity of NDEs.
The burden of proof shifts quickly when Douglas is around, and I once again found myself wondering if maybe the doc should have spent some time going over what he thought compelling meant regarding evidence. Because to everyone else, it means evidence that is so persuasive, the conclusion born from it is nearly impossible to doubt. So tight, so convincing, you'd have to be a fool or a liar to argue against it. But that's never the kind of evidence that Douglas provides. His version of compelling is more like his personal gut feeling dressed up as science. Maybe he just means he personally found it compelling. But that's not how this works. Compelling evidence does not mean some guy named Doug thought it was pretty neat. Because science actually does have truly compelling evidence. We know oxygen deprivation can twist your senses, make you see things that aren't there. Drugs can conjure ghosts in broad daylight, hallucinations, delusions, you name it. So when the lights start going out upstairs and the brain begins to shut down, there's every reason to think it might throw one last picture show as a treat. Now, shared death experiences, these feel like a tougher nut to crack, like a macadamia nut. In these cases, someone really does die, forever. But the strange part is what happens to the folks still breathing that were around them. They don't just witness a death, they experience it. Maybe they see the soul slip out like steam from a manhole cover. Maybe they catch a reel of the dead person's life flickering before their eyes, as if someone queued up the final cut. Sometimes there's a bright light or a flash from the other side. Maybe the Grim Reaper appears for a quick game of chess. For Douglas, this is practically the final nail in the coffin, and it buries the skeptic's arguments with ease.
The most striking aspect of shared death experiences is that they cannot be explained by oxygen deprivation to the brain, drugs, or anesthesia because healthy people are also involved. In my opinion, SDEs are the strongest evidence we have to prove that the consciousness continues beyond the death of the physical body. When you add NDEs and the survival hypothesis into the mix, we are left with strong and compelling evidence for life after death that is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to refute.
I can't say I've seen any big shot skeptics claiming that SDEs and NDEs come from the same bag of tricks. And our man hasn't coughed up anything to prove someone out there has said that they do. Still, I'll take a stab at explaining how these experiences could possibly happen in a world without ghosts, magic, or psychic phenomena. Trauma, grief, extremely high-stress situations all can lead to distorted vision, to dissociation. Expectations also shape reality. If you believe someone is passing over into the light, it's not outside of reason to think you might pay more attention to the light in the room. Was it really bright? Did it just get brighter? Douglas said over and over that belief is the most powerful force on Earth. How strong is the want or need to believe that your loved one gets to live on? How powerful is grief? If our mind is powerful enough, as Douglas thinks, to perform psychic feats, how could it not be powerful enough to imagine a bright white light and convince ourselves it was real? There's also just old-fashioned memory being reworked and reshaped. One person points out they noticed a bright light as Grandpappy passed, and the next person remembers, hey, it was really bright in the room, right? I think I remember that. And then the story becomes we both saw the room get bright. And then later, after countless retellings, maybe the light in the room took the shape of a man, which was eerily coincidental because in life, Grandpappy was also a shape. If the best evidence you've got is secondhand, soaked in emotion, scribbled down long after the smoke cleared, and no one can test it or prove it, it just doesn't hold water. Not in my book. And Mark is missing the Douglas here anyway. Wait, who's Mark? Douglas is missing the mark here anyway, because technically, and very hypothetically, SDEs could be testable. Let's workshop an experiment. You take a group of people, 7 to be exact, you put them in a building shaped like a hexagon, with a smaller hexagon dead center and 6 outer rooms carved up like pie slices. 1 person in each slice of people pie, and 1 in the middle. None of them can see or hear any of the others scream, or like talk or sing or shuffle about. Now, the one in the middle, that's the wild card. Their only job? Press a button. That button will do one of 2 things. Either nothing at all, or it'll suck all the air out of the room, suffocating them. If they die, no big deal, we'll bring them back. A little CPR, maybe a scooch of brain damage. The outer 6, they've got a button too. They press it if they feel something strange is happening, something paranormal. We record everything, the thoughts, the feelings, the hunches, all before they get a chance to talk to each other. Contaminate the pool. Nice, clean data. I'm calling this Conrad's Hexagon, and I hope it never sees the light of day. Every time I invent something, I remember why I should never be handed the keys to any real authority. Obviously, this experiment would be wildly unethical. At least, I hope that's obvious. And I think it's reasonable to conclude that yes, something is happening. But leaping from people say they saw a bright light when Daddy Dunn died to the afterlife is real is not following logic. It's following belief. I'd trade just about anything to know this isn't all there is, that our time on this rock isn't the whole story, that the ones I've lost, that all the lives cut short for no good reason, maybe they're not gone for good. I want to believe there's more waiting on the other side, but wanting doesn't make it true. All I've got is this moment, and I'm hanging on to it with both hands. We can all agree, Douglas, that something is happening. At this point, something is happening is the truth is out there. But that something, maybe it's folks spilling their pain into stories. Is that not enough? Is the power of their grief just not interesting enough? Not compelling to you? So Douglas believes that consciousness survives death. That much is clear. But then what? If there's something beyond this, the corporeal, what is it? NDEs and SDEs happen when someone dies, but then what about after that? Well, he doesn't seem to believe in reincarnation. That might just be too far-fetched, even for him. But ghosts? Yeah. Those are real. And he's encountered them. Got a few in his Rolodex that he'll even call up right now. He's not ready to throw out reincarnation just yet, though, because again, something is happening.
The strongest evidence for reincarnation seems to be the many experiences of people, especially children under the age of 6, who remember vivid details of a past life. Many of these experiences have been verified after the fact. Another form of possible evidence is the many past life regressions performed using hypnosis. These past life regressions can be rather convincing.
I really thought we'd left recovered memories of tall tales in the past with the Satanic Panic, but I guess not. Douglas says that nobody knows if reincarnation exists, but asks how we can explain away the experiences of people who recall a past life with details that are later confirmed. Or what about the marks on their body that correspond with the wounds that killed the person they claim to be the reincarnation of? He cites a 1992 paper by Dr. Ian Stevenson. Birthmarks and birth defects corresponding to wounds on deceased persons. But thankfully, it's clear that the data is inconclusive. But it wasn't inconclusive. It was conclusive and completely clear that this was not a case of anything but a child telling a story. Children love stories. The child remembered being a man named Mahmoud Buhamsi of Kribi, who had a wife called Jamila, who had been fatally injured by a truck after a quarrel with its driver. Stevenson presented this as one of his most compelling cases of reincarnation, except the verification of this past life was that they found a man who was not named Mahmoud Buhamsi, who did not have a wife called Jamila, and did not die in this way. Some might even say he was a different person entirely. So, something is happening. I think it's confirmation bias, leading witnesses, seeing past lives where others see a birthmark. But what does Douglas see? What explanation does he offer?
Some people, especially very young children, seem to recall past lives with amazing details. If this is not reincarnation, what could explain it? Given the fact that many of these people are young children only increases this possibility, as young children seem to be more naturally adept at psychic ability.
It's always psychic children with this guy. That or the Akashic records. He loves those damn records. Now, if you've been down the back alleys of the metaphysical world, you've probably heard of it. It is said that there is a cosmic storehouse of everything that ever was, is, or will be. Every thought, every moment, past, present, future, it's all in there, waiting. And if your mind's psychic energy is tuned just right, you can tap in. Doesn't even matter if you mean to or not. He explains that maybe the person is remembering a past life, just not their own. Something has tethered them to a dusty file in a long-forgotten folder buried deep in the crack of the universe's hard drive. They're picking up thoughts, memories that feel real to them because they are real. They're just not really theirs. He offers one other paranormal explanation as well. Spirits. Ghosts. Maybe the poor sap only thinks through the reincarnation of Kimmy Joe from Spittoon, Texas, because Kimmy Joe's dead little lips had done been whispering in their ear, trying to spit out a final word, finish whatever was left undone. You die with something on your chest, you don't just lie still. You hang around, try to wrap it up, make peace, clear out the drawers before security escorts you out. We've all been there. It's nothing if not relatable. And that tracks because according to the Institute, ghosts and spirits, they ain't so different from the rest of us. And yet, look at how we treat them. Like afterthoughts, like something to be afraid of, like they don't even exist. It's time we start giving ghosts the respect they deserve. And that's why Douglas never liked the term ghost hunters. He says, you don't hunt people, not even the dead ones.
I abhor the terms ghost hunt, ghost hunting, and ghost hunter, since I view ghosts and spirits in the same way as I do any other human being. I would never hunt them any more than I would hunt another person.
The phrase ghost hunter cracks me up. Like some tough guy out there saying he's chasing the deadliest game of all. Folks who already punched their ticket. Doesn't exactly scream high stakes. You want to find a dead guy? Go to a graveyard. They got them all laid out and labeled. Didn't Giles teach you anything?
In my own anomalous research, I've encountered spirits with individual and flawed belief systems, if I may say so, that kept them earthbound. On more than one occasion, a spirit was afraid to cross over or go into the light because he or she was afraid of going to hell.
Douglas has a score to settle with religion, and I can't say I fault him. The guy grew up tangled in the grip of a cult, the kind that knocks on doors and claims to have a direct line to Jehovah, whatever that is. That kind of thing, it leaves a mark, so it's no mystery why anything that smells like blind faith makes him trepidatious. There. I use my word of the week. Smells. Sure, religion's left more than its share of scars on the living. That much is clear. But Douglas figures it goes a step further. He thinks religious beliefs can keep hurting you long after you pass through the veil, a concept completely unrelated to religion.
We were able to help a few spirits cross over with a lot of coaching, but some we couldn't help because their fear was too great. The very thing they were most afraid of was the very condition in which they were living, hell. This first-hand experience offers compelling evidence that not only can we remain earthbound after death due to our individual belief systems, but our consciousness remains intact regarding our individual identities as well.
I'll give him this. If consciousness sticks around after the body's gone cold, I can see fear hanging on too. The kind that festers. After years stuck in the shadows of this world, too scared to take that final step, even a decent ghost might crack. Might go from meek to malevolent, a good ghost gone bad. But Douglas thinks the fear of this is well overblown by showy attention seekers and people too deep into demons and darkness. Sure, he says, and I'm paraphrasing, that a spirit might rough you up some, tug your hair, leave a bruise or two, maybe knock you off your feet and toss you like yesterday's news. 50 Shades of Ghost kind of stuff. But there's nothing solid saying that they can do any real harm you can show to a doctor. That's why doctors never diagnose anyone with a case of the hauntings. The real trouble is in your head. It's the psychic jabs that leave the deepest scars.
Spirits are largely impotent when it comes to physical ability. The biggest threat from malevolent spirits is psychic attacks, which can manifest as fear, anxiety, feeling closed in, etc. Psychic attacks are really an attempt by the malevolent entity to intimidate and possess the victim. Malevolent spirits are nothing more than bullies and need to be dealt with as such.
But when it comes to spirits affecting the physical world, there's a way they can do it. Through us. It's called a seance. If I ever take up the art of drag, which I won't, that'll be my name. Seance knows. Now, Douglas knows his way around a seance. He's been in more than a few, and he's not shy about spilling the tea. One of his go-to techniques goes by the name of table tipping. Sounds like a bar brawl, but it's way less fun. Picture this. A group of bored teenagers in a small town go to a farmer's field late at night and tip all of the sleeping No, wait, wrong one. A gang of hopefuls crowd around a flimsy little table. They lay their hands flat and wait. The thing starts to twitch. Maybe it's the dead saying hello. Maybe it's some untapped psychic power flowing through their fingertips. Maybe it's someone's greasy little paws playing puppet master. Douglas seems to think it's one of the first two.
My experiences with table tipping are nothing short of astounding. Many of us go into a seance for the first time with a fair amount of skepticism and come out rethinking our worldview. Theories as to how the table moves abound. The obvious theory is that spirits are moving the table. One theory, often proffered by skeptics, is the ideomotor effect, which simply means that the table is controlled by our own unconscious responses relayed unwittingly to our muscles, which then affect and drive the table. However, the ideomotor effect still does not explain how the table moves in seeming concert regardless of the number of participants. Sometimes, the table literally appears to have a mind of its own.
And yet, no mention of people just moving the table themselves, with their hands, the way every table has been moved since the dawn of tables. Part of the course involves sitting through a few reels of his private seances, videos he made clear weren't for sharing, so I won't. But if you're curious, what played out in those shadows looked quite similar to a different recording I dug up.
Hello. So what Carol and I are doing here is showing you what table tipping can look like. We've got a very happy spirit here working with us. It's been assisting us. I've been doing
wants to walk out the platform,
sharing some messages with each other, and they've been very happy to sit and confirm these messages.
Yeah, so.
Would you like to say hello to Paul? Look at that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah.
Hello there.
Yeah, they're happy to be filmed.
At one point in his seance, Douglas calls out to the spirit and says,
I have some freaking questions.
and I have to say, so do I. First question, why do these so-called experiments always play out the same? Someone's got to lay a hand on the thing before it budges, or it's something so light, a slight sigh could send it rocking. They say the touch is psychic, a connection, but the only thing it connects to is good old muscle and nerve. If it's really the mind moving it, then show me something real. Same setup, same room, but this time, let's see the table float off the ground, clean into the air. But that doesn't happen. That never happens. Why are ghosts so lazy? Just rock a table on your own for once. Second question. Do you think we're stupid? I watch them sit in their circle, palms down, eyes wide, the table moves under their palms, and suddenly it's proof of the beyond, evidence of forces unseen. They want me to believe it's the dead saying hello, but all I see is the living playing games, moving wood with fingers and calling it a miracle. I call it what it is. A trick with way too many hands in plain sight to not be insulting to everyone they're trying to convince, including themselves. Insulting is the right word here, because this wouldn't even fool a child. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying this is nothing. It's not anecdotal evidence. It's not even a story worth breaking out at the bar. Sure, we can all agree something is happening, but I don't buy for a second that it's what you think. Let's not get it twisted. Seeing a table move only proves one thing. The table moved, which is certainly something happening, but that's all it is. The leap from motion to meaning, from muscle to mysticism, that's belief, pure and simple. Spiritual belief leading to judgment more clouded than the smoking section in the kind of place still brave enough to offer one. And Douglas, poor bastard, doesn't even realize how thick he's breathing it in, and worse, breathing it out. He can't see it, but like the preacher's least favorite daughter, Claire Gustins, I can taste the death of logic on these words the second they leave his lips. Douglas promises that we'll get to the how to do a paranormal investigation part of being a paranormal investigator, like seances, in due course. But to be honest, I'm feeling a little edged here. I want to test out what we've learned, and I had a pretty good idea of how to do it. All I had to do was finish up the exam, and I was done for the day. The exam was like all the others. Questions like,
As with aggressive human beings, so with aggressive spirits. The only thing that truly works is select one. Standing up for oneself, punching them before they know what hit them, gaining the friendship of a bigger bully, running and screaming like a schoolgirl.
why not all four?
Regardless of the cleansing method used, getting rid of the malevolent spirits is all about taking and making a stand against them by using the most potent force available, the select one. Power of physical strength, power of the gods, power of belief, power of bitching.
Sometimes I really found myself impressed with the way Douglas just didn't seem to give a shit about making the Institute seem like any other school. This isn't your regular, boring, accredited school. This is a cool, hip, fun school where the professor, dean, headmaster uses words like bitching, so you know they're down with it. Honestly, at least this exam didn't have that one question that kept popping up.
This question is empty. Choose true.
Douglas really phoned it in sometimes. I submitted the exam and officially clocked out for the rest of the day, but just because the day was over didn't mean the night didn't have other plans. The past few years, I've been hosting a show with an actress from Los Angeles. It was a history show, kind of. We called it Respect the Dead, but we were lying through our teeth. Our speciality was digging up the rotten ones, brushing the dust off their sins, and airing their dirty laundry for laughs. A private joke that turned into a public paycheck. In my spare time, I've been working on a spirit board with our particular brand of morbid humor woven through it. Just needed a few more strokes to call it done, and then I was ready to make an extremely long-distance call. And I already had someone in mind. Anita Bryant, Queen of Citrus, songbird for the sanctimonious, bigot supreme. And now, at long last, a corpse. And then, a creature feature on an episode of Respect the Dead. If anyone could be baited into a posthumous temper tantrum, it was her. And if anyone could make her do it, it was me. The kids in the schoolyard said it was gayer than sin, and they were right. I would have boiled Anita's blood if she still had any, and I would have done it with a smile. If she showed her face, I'd shove another pie in it, and then I'd have a hell of a tale to tell come morning. But if memory served, the spirit board requires a minimum of 2 people's fingers to coax it into talking. So I picked up the phone and called the one soul in this whole damn city gay enough to wake the dead. Brona was there within the hour. We put on one of Anita's records, pumped the ambiance up to paranormal, and tried to summon the Witch of Miami-Dade County. We waited until it got dark. I think it's dark.
Yeah, that's why we waited.
Anita Jane Bryant! But nothing happened. Nothing happened. Gay folks can tie the knot now. With each other. Doesn't that make you want to just appear and hurl Brona across the room?
Hey, I'm sitting right here. Literally right here.
You hear that, Anita? They're right here. Come and get them. We tried to contact her for what felt like an hour, but it was only 59 minutes. Anita! Brian! Get up here! We called her name. Anita Bryant! Played it nice.
Anita, sweetheart.
Anita, come on. Played it mean. You orange juice chugging bitch. Tried every shade of coaxing in the book. But if Anita's specter was still hanging around, she sure wasn't hanging with us. We'd given up and decided that even if we can't shove a pie in her face, we could still shove it in ours. We were calling it quits for good.
Okay, whatever.
When the planchette yanked to the side.
Did that just move itself?
I think it did.
That's so weird. It's supposed to be a ghost that does it.
Sometimes I think Brona gets a kick out of messing with me. I looked down, and there was a long hair attached from the leg of the planchette to my bracelet. And it sure as hell wasn't mine. I sent Brona home with enough pie to kill an orphan, and I hit the sack that night with something twisting in my gut. Could have been the pie, sure, could have been the orange juice mixed with red wine, but it had the flutter of something else. Anticipation, maybe. Tomorrow was the big one. Dumble Doug was set to spill his secrets, the real stuff. He was going to teach us how to develop and use our latent psychic powers. And I was more than ready. I tuned into Douglas's radio show and let his voice fill the room like smoke. Curled up with the goose, I let the pie and wine drag me down into the dark.
Learn, live, laugh, glow, 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 glow. Welcome back to the Metaphysical Human Radio Show with your hosts, Dr. Doug and Dr. Victoria. Today, we're discussing how extremely real our degrees are.
Oh, they're extremely real. I have one on my wall right now. If that's not real, I don't know what is. How are you in this week, Douglas?
I woke up full of pie and ambition, just like it says in that Dolly Parton song. I wanted those damn psychic powers more than anything. I'd always dreamed of it. Wanted to be like that rotten pseudo-orphan Matilda from the movies. The little miss with a bad deal and too much brain. We had the same kind of childhood, the kind that leaves cracks in your bones, but where she got the gift, I got the bruises. Where she got to bend the laws of physics, all I got was the glitter kicked out of me. But now, thanks to Douglas, it was my turn. Pretty soon I'd be tossing junk across the room with nothing but a thought. Goose's litter box? That mess was about to take care of itself. And who better to learn from than someone with psychic powers themselves? Would I learn how to play guitar from someone who doesn't play guitar? Absolutely not. Because I wasn't learning how to play guitar. I was learning how to have psychic powers that I not only wanted, but were owed to me.
With the abundance of anecdotal and empirical evidence, there is no longer any question of whether psychic ability exists. There remain far too many examples of indisputable psychic ability for a reasonable person to ignore.
This is the kind of moment that begged for proof. The kind that could shut a skeptic up for good. A perfect time to roll out the ironclad evidence of psychic powers too real to deny. But just like always, there's nothing. Not a crumb of the proof that's so indisputable. In my line of work, we got a name for that. We call it horse. See, nothing good ever comes from peddling a story about paranormal powers being real beyond doubt when no one's ever managed to show them in a way that couldn't be cooked up by a clever con. Then to turn around and say anyone who questions this, they're the unreasonable one? Well, we got a name for that one too. But I'll keep that to myself. Still, just because I don't believe that these abilities have been proven to exist indisputably doesn't mean I'm not open to believing. I am. I want to believe in all of it. Something is happening. It just has to be. Now, Douglas claims that he personally has psychic abilities, has 2 of what he calls the Claires, and I love this. They sounded like a clique of ruthless girls at schools, but they were something else entirely, a nickname for all sorts of psychic powers. You've probably met the ringleader, Clairvoyance, but there are plenty of other girls in the group, each with their own nifty little trick. See, each of the Claires got aligned to something the rest of us can't touch. Clairvoyance sees what hasn't happened yet. Claircognizance knows things no one's got any business knowing. Clairsentience feels what lay beyond the world of touch. Clairaudience hears the sounds that never even got made. Clairempathy is tuned into your emotions before you've even figured out you're having them. And then there's Clairgustance.
Gustance!
Poor kid. Her folks must have had a grudge to stick her with that name. Clairgustance? Well, basically, she can taste the dead. Yeah, taste him. If that was my calling, I'd let the machine have it. And the professor?
While my own psychic ability includes claircognizance and clairsentience, I do not really think of myself as a psychic in the typical fashion. Unlike some others, I was not born with heightened psychic abilities. I've had to conduct research into the matter, as well as work to develop my abilities over the last several years, to the point that I have an uncanny and highly accurate ability to read people and situations in a way that goes beyond intuition.
As for me, call me Clairskeptical. It's not a power, I just don't want to be left out. Douglas seems to think, as he often does, that the Akashic Records are the perfect way to explain his beliefs. He says maybe that's where the Claires get their powers, so that those tuned into things beyond the mundane are able to connect to the Akashic Records using deliberate intent. How does a psychic know the layout of a room they've never stepped into, or the secrets of a man they've never met? Simple. They don't. Or, they're pulling pages from that silent library. Not magic, not exactly, just intent pointed in the right direction. He figures those cold chills and whispers in the dark, the ones that feel like ghosts, maybe they're not spirits at all. Maybe it's just the past bleeding through, a memory caught on a reel looping in the ether, not haunted, just a moment being shared. Now, if the Claires are the prom queens of the psychic world, then Psychokinesis is the goth kid in the back of the class who always had their bag checked at the door. You might know her by her old name, Telekinesis. That's the one Matilda has. The psychic ability to move or affect an object without touching it. That's the juice I'm after. I'm not here to trade recipes with ghosts. I wanted to slam a table into the wall just by thinking about it. In the psychic world, psychokinesis is the line between reading palms for pennies and making a real difference. Hell, with my newfound powers, I might even throw on a mask and a cape. Me. Mask. Sounds unbelievable. Douglas says both humans and spirits have access to psychokinesis, but again, if you think there's a ghost using psychokinesis to throw Mummy's good china against the wall, you're probably wrong.
All the indications are that in the vast majority of the few cases that arise, poltergeists are not spirits or ghosts at all, but rather unconscious, psychokinetic activity that originates with a human agent who is psychically sensitive. In many cases, the agent is an adolescent girl going through hormonal changes, but this is not the only cause, nor are adolescent girls the only source. The agent can be anyone, regardless of age or gender.
Haunting? That's a first period. Seen a shadow person? First period. Amity-style blood dripping down the walls all heavy flow like? First period for sure. To be fair to him, he clearly states it's not always a girl going through puberty. Sometimes it's a boy. But he also seems to always state that you should be on the lookout for one, just to be safe. Douglas, look to your left. Look to your right. If you see a 12-year-old there, leave him alone. See, having the gift is one thing, plenty of folks got it. But like I said, the real hook is in how you use it. Some are fine flipping a few cards or tracing lines on a stranger's palm as a way to keep the engine running. But others, they fake the whole act with a grin, aiming to make enough cash to fill more than just their gas tank. There's a whole racket out there built on the dead, and I ain't talking about my little spot on the airwaves. We don't make a dime off the grief of the living. We trade in something else, the sins of the damned, and it's about time they paid for those sins. I'm talking about the likes of John Edward, Sylvia Brown, Teresa Caputo, the usual suspects. To me, they're hucksters with a flair for theatrics, no more gifted than a coin tossed blind, and Douglas, always perched just on the edge of actual conviction, gives the expected nod that folks like this walk among us.
In the vast majority of cases, psychic readings are never 100%, even with true psychics. To be sure, there are fake psychics in the world who are dishonest and desire to cheat people out of their money using the person's own tender memories against him or her.
I wish the quote ended there, but he can't leave well enough alone. No, he's got to make it strange in that special way only he knows how.
But this in no way means that all psychics are dishonest or charlatans any more than it means all business people are dishonest. Just because one priest molests children doesn't mean they all do.
I have to say, he's right. Some professed psychics being grifters doesn't make all psychics dishonest or charlatans. What does make them all dishonest would be the fact that they are all claiming something they have no actual evidence of, usually for profit or personal gain, and often at the emotional expense of someone. Convincing someone that you possess abilities you have not tested and proven to be true is not a prerequisite in business. Abusing children isn't what makes someone a priest, but making claims that are completely unprovable based on a phenomena that has been tested repeatedly, through which all people making claims have proved themselves to be liars, deluded, or simply observant, is the entire basis of being a psychic. It is the fabric it is made of. For a long stretch, getting your skills tested wasn't just simple, it was a golden ticket. And you played your cards right, you didn't just walk away vindicated with your name and lights, you walked away swimming in cash. And all because of one man, James Randi. For over 30 years, the James Randi Educational Foundation kept a suitcase full of money on ice, waiting for some Claire to come knocking. It started small, just $1,000 for a little proof. By the time Buffy Summers was dusting leeches, the pot had swelled to a cool milli. All you had to do was show the goods. No tricks, no smoke, no mirrors. And they came in droves. Psychics, seers, spoonbenders. Almost 1,000 took their shot. Every last one of them missed. Some flopped so hard you could hear it echo off the walls.
The styrofoam and the lights form electricity which pulls the page.
Randi, the man behind the curtain, said they never seemed to stop and wonder if maybe the power wasn't real. Nah, couldn't be that. Had to be the lighting, the humidity, the static charge in the air. Anything but the possibility that perhaps they were deluded. And despite this, Douglas finds no issue believing in psychic abilities.
There is no longer any question of whether psychic ability exists, that there remains far too many examples of indisputable psychic ability for a reasonable person to ignore.
When Douglas starts talking like the matter's settled, like psychic ability isn't even up for debate anymore, I find myself looking around the room for an unseen and malevolent presence. Not looking for ghosts, of course, but for a goddamn gas leak. When it comes to folks who make their living claiming they talk to the dead, see your future, or can dig up your past lives like bones in the dirt, to me, the line between a harmless hustle and a dirty con comes down to one thing: honesty. If you're clear that it's all smoke and mirrors, then maybe I'm the fool mad at a parlor trick. But if you're cashing in on hope with nothing to back it up, not a shred of proof or a promise that holds any weight, then you're playing with fire. And someone's bound to get burned. There is untold potential to do irreversible harm. Douglas doesn't seem to agree, though.
Nobody can successfully mount an argument against a person using his or her natural talents to earn a living. In fact, most people don't think twice about Hollywood celebrities and professional athletes earning millions of dollars a year, but then some of these same people will complain about those with psychic abilities using them to earn a living. It makes no logical sense.
Actually, if you pay someone to play a sport for you, they then demonstrably and irrefutably do that. Same can't be said for psychics. Folks don't line up for those velvet curtained parlors thinking it's a 50-50 gamble. They go in hungry for answers they think they can't find on their own. Funny thing is, they could. All it takes is a coin and the will to flip it.
Therefore, there is nothing ethically wrong with using your natural or developed psychic talents to earn a living, provided that you are honest, charge a reasonable and competitive professional fee, and provide something of value in return. It is time for the complainers to focus on those who earn $20 million to appear in a single movie and leave those who are actually trying to improve this world alone.
Now, see, the trouble with this setup is plain. Because there's no real value behind it. Nothing you can hold up to the light and call solid. Just noise, like a lone nickel spinning on a diner table waiting to pick a side. Everybody hoping it's worth more than it is. And plenty of folks think they're saving the world. The Scientologists sure do. I should know. But that doesn't mean you let them run wild. Intentions don't mean a damn thing in the face of real harm. And even Douglas knows many of the claims being made don't pass muster.
It is important to understand that psychic readings are never 100%, even with true psychics. Any psychic who claims otherwise is, frankly, a fraud, or at the very least, full of him or herself. Always view your psychic abilities with respect and healthy humility, and never take yourself or your abilities too seriously. The best accuracy is around 75% to 85%. Typical accuracy among some psychics is only a little better than chance, 50%.
The typical accuracy being around 50% means you may as well spend the money on some cute antique coins to flip. Douglas plays the part of the cautious operator, tells folks not to go shooting their mouths off with promises they can't keep, warns them to keep their hands clean from the real dirty tricks, like guarantees on a prophecy or offers to cast or remove curses. But him and me, we don't see eye to eye on the deeper rot. We fundamentally disagree on if it can ever be ethical to charge money for a service you cannot prove you're providing, especially when your customers are desperate, suffering. But luckily for me, the kind of psychic powers Douglas is going to teach me to access don't require preying on the grief of those left behind. Just a focused mind, a quiet room, and a goose.
When developing these abilities, it can take weeks or months to see progress. But don't be discouraged. You will see some results fairly quickly if you follow the techniques in the course combined with your own inner guidance.
Fairly quickly is good. Speed is the name of the game. Not breakneck, not crawling, just fast enough to keep my interest from slipping through the cracks. His instructions, they sounded simple. Maybe too simple. That kind of easy always comes with a catch. And this time was no different.
If you are conflicted about whether psychic phenomena are real, you'll never be able to develop your own psychic ability.
Well, ain't that just taking the easy way out? A real bait and switch, you know? First it's anyone can develop their psychic ability, and now it's anyone who doesn't already believe it won't be able to see how true it really is by testing it for themselves. Oh, didn't work? Sounds like your fault. You just didn't believe hard enough. But I pushed that aside. I wasn't going to be discouraged. I'd wanted this my whole life. That had to count for something, right? Hell, when I was 12, I cast a spell in my basement begging the universe for psychic powers. Thought maybe if I wanted it bad enough, it'd come find me. 20 years gone and not a flicker. Been waiting for that to kick in for a couple decades now, but today seemed like as good a time as any to get a little more proactive. First thing on the agenda was starting a psychic journal. Just me, a pen, and whatever strange truths might claw their way out of my head. After that, the daily ritual began. It goes like this. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, if you remember. Picture a room. In this room is where your psychic power comes from. On the wall of this room is a knob. Turn it and say, I increase my psychic powers. Now wait. For me, the waiting, the doing nothing, that's the hard part. And so, I called it an early night. Only thing left was to brief my new psychic notebook on how the first day as a table thrower played out. Dear Psychic Diary, today was a great start to my psychic journey. I am hopeful that I will soon feel my powers growing, and tomorrow at the Institute, I've been promised near indisputable proof that life doesn't just exist after death, but also out there, everywhere, on thousands of planets across the universe. And those people, they've been here, watching, waiting, creatures from the dark edges of the galaxy slipping through the cracks, landing real quiet on our spinning rock. Tomorrow, it's all about aliens. Sweet dreams, diary. Yours forever, Kaylin Conrad. Bachelor's degree. Woke up with a crick in my neck and the aftertaste of a bad dream in my mouth. I'll give it to you straight. Aliens never stirred much in me. Flying saucers, little green men, none of it kept me up nights. Just one ever left a mark. Went by Roger, disguised like a dime store Halloween mask, mouthed like a switchblade. I didn't care what planet he was from. What mattered was that for the first time, someone on the other side of the glass felt like me. Made the whole world a little less empty. And in a city where everyone keeps their heads down and their doors shut, that meant something. Seeing someone like you, even through the TV's glow, it helps folks remember they aren't completely alone in the dark. And that's what this whole thing was about, wasn't it? Not being alone. Not after we die, and not in the universe. And we aren't, at least according to Douglas, who seems to wholeheartedly believe that not only is there life out there in the universe, but it's also been here for a visit.
It has been estimated that there are 10,000 or more civilizations advanced enough to communicate technologically in our galaxy alone, which has an estimated 200 to 400 billion stars. And this doesn't include the entire universe, with an estimated 100 billion galaxies. With these numbers, it is unreasonable to conclude that sentient, extraterrestrial life doesn't exist outside our planet. With an estimated 10,000 civilizations in our galaxy alone, it is also unreasonable to conclude that none are capable of interstellar travel. Some extraterrestrial intelligences, ETI, are likely visiting Earth.
There's a whole mess here. But luckily, this time, we were provided a citation. So that estimated 10,000 or more civilizations advanced enough to communicate technologically in our galaxy alone, that's based off the Drake equation, which I'm not sure Douglas understands. So we start off with a crooked premise, and from there it all spirals. Assumptions based on misunderstandings, and then conclusions based on those guesses. See, the Drake equation isn't accurate as a tool to estimate the number of intelligent life forms that exist, or how many advanced civilizations they've created. At best, it can be used to stimulate dialogue. It's just another way to wonder just how rare life like ours would have to be for us to be the only player in the game. But mostly, Drake cooked it up so he had something slick to drop at a conference. Something that'd catch a few ears and keep the room from nodding off. The Drake equation isn't flawed in the traditional sense. The formula would likely hold up if there was any way to know what to plug into it. Take L, for instance. That's the stretch of time a civilization's out there hollering into the void, trying to get noticed. But we've only got one data point, us, and we just showed up to the party. One lonely signal in a universe that doesn't talk back. Then there's the question of habitable planets per solar system. No one's handing out that number, and how long does it take on average for a bunch of clever apes to build radios and start beaming their presence to the stars? Nobody knows. Maybe it's swift, maybe it takes forever, maybe it never happens twice. We just don't know. The equation's clean, the universe isn't. So Douglas, looking at this formula, filled to the brim with averages based on a single source, and not only using it as the foundation for his belief in aliens, but also making that the opening to this course is worrying. And not only is he saying he thinks that aliens have walked among us, he's saying it's basically an undeniable fact.
So where are they? Unfortunately, most anomalous phenomena are unfalsifiable, meaning it cannot be proven one way or the other. When considered as a whole, the body of evidence for the existence of ETIs visiting Earth is actually compelling to the point of it being all but proven. There are simply far too many credible witnesses and unexplained UFO events to dismiss.
I'd like to meet some of these credible witnesses. Unfortunately, Douglas doesn't point us in the direction of any, but Douglas insists he met some credible witnesses over the summer. They just go to another school. It's a tune I've heard too many times in this godforsaken class. Douglas throwing his hands up and saying, well, we can't really ever prove our claims with evidence, can we? And instead of that being the end of the story, no evidence, then it's just a claim, he pivots to implying that the claims themselves are now evidence on their own, simply because that's the best they've got. Well, I can't show you any proof of an alien because nobody can or ever has, so this drawing I made of one will simply have to count as indisputable. And that's the kind of logic you just can't argue with, because it's not logic. But he's wrong on this point. Yes, some paranormal phenomena would likely be unfalsifiable, but aliens visiting the planet absolutely would not be. If aliens are really running around with bobbleheads and Ozempic waste, sucking up cows to turn into bloodless organ purses, or flattening fields and snatching up farmers like they're the FBI in Waco, Texas, we'd know about it. I guess if you were to ask the true believers who think an unidentified flying smudge on a photograph is evidence, they'd say, we do know about it. You just need to wake up. By the way, these researchers, they call themselves ufologists. But these days, the term UFO carries a stigma. So now they're UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. That's how it is now. You can't even say an object is flying and unidentified anymore because of the woke mind virus. Now, I've never built a house, but I have painted a face, and I can tell you that if the foundation is busted, it's never going to pan out. And that's what these 10,000 civilizations are. His foundational belief that holds up his assertion that aliens are visiting Earth. And the house of cards he builds on that foundation is more than unstable. He explains that there are plenty of hypotheses why people think the Greys might be summering in Palm Springs. Could be they're snacking on infants or lifting strands of our DNA, in my opinion. Maybe they just heard we have delicious oil, so they told their citizens we had weapons of mass destruction. It works. But Douglas, he doesn't buy any of that. He figures it's not malice, just curiosity. Says they're tourists, not invaders. It's just a silly little mix-up when they abduct someone and implant devices in them without consent. And in his book, that means we've got nothing to fear.
My personal belief, based on grounded reason and available information, is that they are here to study us, just as we will someday study other planetary civilizations. For all we know, we could have descended from the survivors of a crashed spacecraft thousands of years ago. And, of course, there is the theory that we are actually Martians who escaped Mars when it lost its atmosphere millions of years ago.
Oh, of course. Who hasn't heard that theory? That would explain why there are no humans on Mars.
But one of the big questions out there is, are they here to hurt us? Are aliens malevolent? Human nature being what it is, many people are quick to paint the typical doomsday picture of aliens invading us or abducting us for nefarious purposes.
As an example, he cites a quote from Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking.
If aliens visit us, the outcome would be as much as when Columbus landed in America, which didn't turn out well for the Native Americans. We only have to look at ourselves to see how intelligent life might develop into something we wouldn't want to meet. Such advanced aliens would perhaps become nomads, looking to conquer and colonize whatever planets they can reach.
Seems Douglas doesn't like what he has to say and disagrees entirely. And here's his logic. Well, here's his reasoning. Well, here's how he explains why he believes what he believes. Say we know aliens exist and have civilizations because of the Drake Principle. That's our rotten foundation. Building on that, Douglas claims that
any species that advances technologically to the point of interstellar space travel and hasn't annihilated itself in the process must necessarily have evolved spiritually as well.
There's no proof of this, of course, not a shred, but that doesn't stop Douglas. He's decided it's true, and that's enough for him. It's like me saying aliens would have to be polyamorous if they ever wanted to work together long enough to make it past the next star. Sure, maybe. You could believe that if you felt like it. But there's no reason to, other than it just must be true because it makes sense to you. So, rotten foundation, flawed conclusion based on it. But he keeps going.
Spiritual evolution and enlightenment must, by definition, include respect for natural universal laws such as respect for free will, the primary component of which is do no harm.
Now this don't mean a damn thing. Time and time again, all evidence we have on the evolution of technology has proven you can toss spirituality and free will out the window. There's no logical basis for this assertion, but he tries his darndest to provide one anyway.
The fact that interstellar travel takes a lot of time to achieve allows for spiritual advancement and time to work out base, animalistic, aggressive, and barbaric behaviors. It allows a species time to create a dominant, peaceful nature in which they make good galactic citizens.
Yes, developing interstellar travel could take a very long time, and it may end in a species being less aggressive, but there's literally no reason to believe that it would, or that it's an inevitability. All evidence available is in direct contradiction to this. just look at my friends, the Animorphs. They were fighting an intergalactic war against a parasitic species that, if anything, were made more aggressive by their access to advancing technology. And that's just one example from history. Now, here's one of my favorite lines in the entire course. It encapsulates the true scientific method Douglas actually follows.
Could I be wrong? Of course. I could simply be naive. But I don't think so.
Could I be wrong? Of course. I could simply be naive. But I don't think so. I know you don't think so. Neither do flat earthers. I don't think so. Therefore, I am not. Sorry, I'm getting frustrated. He doesn't like debunkers because they ridicule his points. But again, when someone is pointing out that something is ridiculous, you can call that ridicule, but it doesn't make you any less ridiculous. When the facts are laughable, calling them that isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And wearing a clown suit doesn't make you a martyr. It makes you a clown. And look, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm the naive one. But I don't think so.
And even if I am wrong, what I've written above must apply to enough species that galactic peace is preserved, in that they won't allow any aggressive species to conquer other planets. There could easily be counterparts to the United Nations out there, such as galactic federations that ensure peace in regions of the galaxy and universe.
Maybe you have faith that somewhere out there in the stars, there's a galactic version of the UN. But all that means is we got aliens in suits giving speeches, shaking tentacles under sterile boardroom lights about all the atrocities they're not going to lift a sucker to fix. But closer to home, down here in the dirt, how's our own UN holding up? Last I checked, the body count keeps rising and the scoreboard's looking grim. Real grim.
So, is there any evidence to support my hypothesis? Yes, there actually is quite a bit.
Can I see it?
The strongest support for my hypothesis is that evidence shows aliens have been visiting Earth for thousands of years.
Oh, wow, really? Well, can I see it?
If they wanted to invade us, they missed their chance to do it without a fight. Why wait thousands of years until a civilization becomes technologically advanced to try to conquer them?
For the thrill? Because they were bored of conquering easy game and wanted a challenge? No, I guess the fact that aliens haven't attacked Earth, in fact, have never even been proven to have visited Earth, is not an argument against their existence, but for their existence. And peaceful nature?
And if a new alien species comes along, then I refer back to a spiritually enlightened galactic federation to provide deterrence.
Spiritually Enlightened Galactic Federation. I hope that's their full name. Had a ring to it. Sharp, straight to the point. And helpful, too. I like when a product does exactly what it says on the tin.
Alien spacecraft don't appear hostile. They appear curious. This is also shown from some accounts by astronauts that alien spacecraft followed us to the moon, were on the moon watching us land, and are routinely visible during space shuttle flights. Some feel that we were warned off the moon, but not by destroying our spacecraft.
I'm not touching this. If you're gonna tell me astronauts said aliens followed us to the moon, get out of my face. I'm done with you. But he wasn't done with me, because then, at the end of all of this, after everything I was just put through, he basically throws it all away. He says, oh, one thing that bears mentioning is, all the abductions. Because if he's buying what all these folks are selling about Close Encounters, then he's gotta face the music. These stories, they ain't about peace and light. They're about getting snatched in the dead of night, poked, prodded, maybe even worse. Nothing says spiritual enlightenment like a cold slab and an unlubricated probe, right? But don't lose sleep over it. Douglas probably certainly isn't. His whole theory leans hard on what folks say happened. But somehow, their beliefs also rip his to shreds. And that doesn't shake him one bit. Funny how that works.
But I'm not ready to throw in the towel just yet. We have no direct proof that alien abductions are occurring, despite any compelling evidence that they are. We also don't know the bigger picture of why abductions occur. Occam's razor would suggest that we need to make sure these abductions are not the result of the human mind or human intervention such as the government for the purposes of testing and or control of the masses. If abductions are a reality, then what is. And I will fight against these alien abductors with everything I have.
I will fight against these invaders in any way I can. Not on my planet, you gray bobble-headed freak. I can't do this anymore. I just can't. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I can't.
As I've stated numerous times, we must remain grounded in our approach to all things anomalous and metaphysical. I would also recommend that you watch any and all UFO documentaries that appear on TV. You can also find many on YouTube.
I needed a moment. Hell, I needed several, and I need to suspend them unconscious. I thought about pouring a drink, something to take the edge off, but I got a rule about that. Keep it past noon and it feels like a choice, not a habit. So I settled on a nap, and the goose agreed. An hour had slipped by and I was just about ready to stare down the wizard. All I needed was a jolt of caffeine and a shower to wash the edge off my nerves. The frustration was hanging by a thread. I needed one last shove to knock it loose. Figured it was as good a time as any to slip into my Matilda meditation. When I came out the other side, the storm had passed. I was calm, collected, ready for whatever came next. Maybe even a little more psychic than before. Only time would tell.
It seems that many abductees have residual traces of alien goo or whatever on their body after an abduction.
Alien goo! Can I be wrong? Of course, I could simply be naive. But I don't think so. I tried. You saw it. When they ask, you'll tell them I tried, right? That I tried real good? I met this girl with a stupid name once who used to say, the hardest thing in this world is to live in it. Didn't understand what she meant until Douglas walked into my life.
Could I be wrong? Of course. I could simply be naive. But I don't think so.
You can do this. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this.
Many shapes, sizes, and configurations of UFOs have been reported over the decades. Some have stated that over 100 different species are visiting Earth. I have difficulty believing most of these examples.
Most. He has difficulty believing most of these examples. But the rest?
All the above having been said, I do, in fact, believe that something is going on with alien abductions. As with other paranormal phenomena, 90% or more of the abduction stories can be explained in ways that have nothing to do with aliens. This leaves about 10% or less of the stories that are compelling and difficult to explain.
Again, we all believe that something is happening with alien abductions or ghost sightings or whatever. Something is quite literally always happening to everyone and everything at all times, everywhere, forever. We just don't believe the same something is happening. And for me, the something that's happening for all 100% of alien sightings, well, none of those stories ever gave me a reason to believe it came from anywhere we haven't already mapped. Nothing that couldn't be pinned to the strange corners of this planet we still don't fully understand. For instance, the ocean of our thoughts and emotions, which I guess some people call the brain and not the ocean. But also the actual ocean. We haven't dipped our toes in most of those deeper waters. So yeah, the unknown, sure, it's out there, but it's not necessarily from up there. And when you consider the source of those UFO sightings, how they came to form their memories, tell their stories, it's even sketchier. Douglas mentions that there are times when memories of an alien encounter recovered through hypnosis might be valid. He says it's one of the top shelf tools in the world of abduction research, a tool sharp enough to cut through memory, or dull enough to slice it all wrong. It depends on who's holding the knife. Across the Atlantic, the Brits scoff at it, say it's a bad habit, say it scrambles the truth, replaces gaps with fantasy, makes a mess of the facts. But where Douglas lies, and I think he does, is on American soil, and there the story's different. Folks use it, swear by it, build cases, and whole entire entertainment acts around it. He knows the flaws, knows most hypnotists couldn't find the truth when locked alone in a room with it. Instead, they lead, they twist, they hear what they want and call it gospel. No filter, no caution, just questions loaded with suggestions and their subsequent answers soaked in fiction. But even with all of that, he doesn't tell you to walk away from it. Not him. He says, do it right or don't do it at all. In fact, lucky for you, if you intend to practice it, he has several paid courses you can take and must take in order to do this properly. But wait, how do you know he's better certified to teach you how to do hypnosis than literally anyone? You got the stamp of approval from himself. And while he could be wrong, he doesn't think so.
If you plan on using hypnosis as part of your abduction research, you must take courses MHS.M8 and MHS.M13 in order to make sure you are conducting hypnosis sessions responsibly and appropriately. This is true even if you are already certified in hypnosis.
He closes the course with a little section with a title that got a good chuckle out of me. Combating Abductions. I'm tickled pink by how serious of a topic this would be if aliens were real, and how short and inconsequential of a section this is. This is America, Douglas. I know how to handle an abduction. A gun in one hand, a flag in the other, and the quiet certainty that I'm the only one with a real claim to freedom. Funny thing is, that's sort of his answer too. Not exactly, but close enough. He says, truth is, if you know who you are, if you know you've got free will, that alone can keep the paranormal at bay. His motto goes like this.
When a person is self-possessed, they cannot become possessed by anyone or anything else.
Basically, you cannot be taken by the aliens if your mind is strong and you believe you're safe.
The beauty of this approach is that it works, even when there are no bona fide paranormal phenomena taking place, because it has to do with a person's mind, disposition, self-concept, and attitude. As I've said many times, when a person is self-possessed, they cannot become possessed by anyone or anything else.
No, I dig it. When you got a grip on yourself, no one else can get a hold. It's like my aunt Rupel Fracker used to say, if you don't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love somebody else? Think about it. She hasn't. The exam was easy, as was to be expected.
We often refer to this as the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Select one. Occam's razor. Mensa code. The you're too smart principle. Occam's shaver.
Occam's shaver? I'm sorry, it's cute until I remember that I paid $1,000 for this course, and even he doesn't take it seriously. I passed the course once again. The burnout from Douglas stretching the boundaries of logic was intense, though. I needed to unwind. Even my throat was hurting at this point. I did my psychic powers meditation, called out to the world to give me what I desired, but call went unanswered. Nothing but dial tone. I didn't even feel the calm that normally accompanies a good sit and breathe. But I didn't want to be too negative about it, lest the universe deem me unworthy, as Douglas had cautioned. Dear Psychic Diary, everything today went perfectly, and I'm more in tune with the universe than ever. Dear Real Psychic Diary, I hate this. I can't feel my powers growing at all. I don't want Douglas to be disappointed in me, so I have to keep up appearances with my other narc diary. The only thing more disappointing than this failure has been you, Real Psychic Diary. I needed to shake this off, stretch my legs, feel the breeze carry the day off my skin. It's hard to see the stars in this city. The sky is kind of cold, dark, and lifeless, but that didn't always stop me from trying. The stars talk when they want to, and when they don't, they still have a way of saying something. There's a quiet in them that settles you. Not just the kind that ties you to the vast dark above, but the kind that reminds you you're still breathing down here with the rest of this sorry lot. Folks have been staring up at these same lights since the beginning, long before they had names for any of it. Some of those stars died before the ones gazing at them were even born. We're all made from the same dust, Douglas says, but I didn't need prose to tell me why it all mattered. I could feel it. Laying flat on my back with the night wrapped around me like a cheap coat, staring up, knowing every soul before me had done the same thing, knowing I wasn't special at all. Somehow that makes it mean even more. I would have stayed the night if my body had let me, but my sciatic nerve would have made me pay for that with interest. So, back at home, in bed with a goose, I settled for bringing the stars indoors with me. I let the sounds of the city in, and we watched them together. Just my goose and I. Damn it, my back is killing me. Yesterday bled me dry between the endless loops of nonsense rationalizing and Douglas's parade of unreasonable frickin' opinions. I was about ready to walk off into the night and never look back. But still, I was amped up for the last two subjects for this to end, cryptids and paranormal investigations. Today was the former. We're talking Bigfoot, Nessie, the Mothman, and anything else that so many people claim to have seen, but curiously only while holding the world's worst cameras with the world's shakiest hands. The study of these unproven creatures is called cryptozoology, and as Douglas notes, it is not considered a real branch of science, which I guess is a good thing because, also according to Douglas, science just hasn't been thinking critically about things, even when something is clearly happening.
As can be expected, the field of cryptozoology is considered to be pseudoscience by the mainstream scientific community, but this really means nothing. We discuss pseudoscience in course MHS B1, the first bachelor's course, and we will discuss the failings of mainstream science later in this course.
Oof. Off to a rough start. There's a good reason why things are considered pseudoscience, and an outright rejection of that without due explanation makes me feel like maybe Douglas wasn't able to come up with a competent one. Sometimes Douglas says something that feels like it makes perfect sense to him, but to everyone else, is just the most batshit paragraph you'll ever read. Here, he's discussing how important it is to be cross-trained in various paranormal studies. So you can ignore all the most simple and logical explanations and instead jump to many other conclusions that are much more exciting.
What if you investigate a Bigfoot sighting, where UFOs were also sighted at the same time? Is this a cryptozoological event or a UFO event? There have been quite a few reports over the years of Bigfoot sightings connected to UFO sightings. What is the connection?
Yeah. The connection is that people who believe in aliens visiting Earth are simply more likely to believe that the guy in a Cookie Monster hoodie they saw is a Bigfoot, stomping around the forest, selling hairy foot pics on X, the everything app. Although if Bigfoot is selling big feet pics, they're probably blurry as hell. Try getting a clear shot of something said to be wandering around Yosemite, and all of a sudden, nobody can hold a camera. In the eccentric circles of paranormal hunters, those smudged out-of-focus shots have a name. They call them blob squatches. And by my count, they make up their whole damn portfolio. To the point that we may as well just call the cryptid itself blob squatch. I'm minoring in blob squatchology, which is probably why Douglas goes on to tell us that we need not concern ourselves with questionable evidence, the scientific method, or the falsifiability of claims. In fact, we should abandon these things altogether.
In our efforts to discover whatever truths exist, we as serious researchers must abandon the closed-minded belief systems of mainstream science and return to the true scientific method, which is the open-minded search to discover and explain reality, whatever that means and wherever that takes us.
Again, that's not a method. That's a mission statement and provides no scientific guidelines on how to distinguish between useful techniques and useless ones. And that seems to really align with keeping Douglas's worldview intact, and to keep us going in the course without incredulity standing in our way, which I assume benefits the Institute, as courses can be taken one at a time and further payment isn't guaranteed if a student is unhappy. So apparently a lot of people are partial to Sasquatch, or Big Feet. Kind of a fixation, I guess, with big feet. There's probably a better word for it, but I wouldn't know anything about that.
You are encouraged to choose a primary cryptid of interest and possibly a small handful of secondary cryptids in the beginning. For example, many cryptozoologists favor Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. According to the now defunct website Squatchopedia.com, hominology is the study of hominids.
The way Douglas could just say things like, according to the now defunct website Sasquatchopedia.com, without an ounce of apparent self-awareness of how truly funny it is so impressive.
Compelling evidence for the existence of Bigfoot are rocks and sticks thrown at field investigators, handprints on their vehicles, potential Bigfoot vocalizations, and the numerous eyewitness reports made around the world, many by credible witnesses.
Yeah, I can picture it now, clear as day. Some Chicken Little flapping their gums, crying Bigfoot because earlier in the woods, a twig fell from a tree and landed near them, as a bird screeched nearby. In a panic, they ran back to their car. Then they freeze, plain as day, there's a handprint on the window. Something that could only be made by a creature with hands. Sasquatch. But this course is about true science, not nonsense. So Douglas does prepare you for if you find actual evidence, like a Sasquatch footprint. Douglas details how you estimate its height, citing a non-defunct, but probably should be website, BigfootLives.com. Amazing. If you like the kind of bat boy journalism you can usually only find in the grocery store checkout rags, this site's for you. For example, Polish Yeti caught spying on Bikini Girl.
The Polish Yeti, allegedly roaming the Tatra Mountains, has been spotted again already. Earlier this week, the Morning Star reported how 27-year-old Piotr Kowalski from Warsaw spotted an ape-like creature hiding amongst rocks up in the Tatra Mountains. Now 19-year-old Justina Folger has come forward with a video of her on a camping trip in the same area. Folger reported to Super Express how the hairy creature stalked her as she swanned around in her bikini as her boyfriend filmed with his free hand.
Or this piece of spectacular journalism.
Is this Bigfoot? Or is it a bear with bad skin? It is furry, lives in the woods, and walks on all fours. Beyond that, there are no hard facts about the furtive creature spotted prowling around the foot of a tree in Pennsylvania. But its mysterious appearance has prompted a storm of speculation, and prompted many Bigfoot believers to grab their cameras and head for the woods. Others, however, believe it is just a bear with bad skin. The animal was photographed by Rick Jacobs. I couldn't figure out what it was, he said, but I've been hunting for years and I've never seen anything like this. Mr. Jacobs contacted the Bigfoot Research Organization, which pursues reports of the legendary two-legged creature, also known as the Sasquatch, that some people believe lives in parts of the US and Canada. It appears to be a primate-like animal. In my opinion, it appears to be a juvenile Sasquatch, said Paul Maheda of the Bigfoot Group.
Now, this is not to say that there's never been an animal thought not to exist or to no longer exist that has then been validated to have been or still be real. Douglas, he's got this pitch, says cryptozoology's the real deal, claims it walks ahead of zoology, blazing trails into the dark where science hasn't shined its light yet. He paints a picture where the cryptozoologists do the chasing, and once they bag the truth, the zoologists swoop in with lab coats and clipboards to make it all official. As if zoologists are FBI agents taking all the credit for a case that was actually solved by some overzealous, plucky girl who listens to murder podcasts all day. But that doesn't hold up. It's zoologists who are the ones finding new or long-dead animals, and even in the listicles Douglas relies on instead of covering the subject himself, many of the claims are unsupported by science, or the historical record, or even the listicle itself. Like, for instance, the site Douglas pawned off the lesson plan on refers to kangaroos as former cryptids.
Early explorers to Australia described bizarre creatures never before seen by Europeans. They wrote of creatures with heads like deer that stood upright like men and hopped like frogs. The creatures sometimes sported two heads, one on their shoulders and one on the stomach. Such accounts were understandably disregarded and ridiculed by fellow colleagues. That changed in the 1770s, when a dead specimen of this odd beast was exhibited in England as a public curiosity. Today, this creature is known as the kangaroo.
What they mean is, Western colonizers didn't recognize the animal, so it was a cryptid, despite indigenous populations knowing exactly what they were and how incredibly common they are. Some people love to assume that if they haven't heard of something, it doesn't exist. That's like going to England and seeing a pug and deciding it's a mythical creature called a flat-faced skull failure, when really, it's just an everyday mistake. But even then, there's very little evidence there was much of any pushback about the existence of a kangaroo. I'm sure people were skeptical about the creature with a head growing out of its stomach, and guess what? They should have been. Such a creature literally does not exist. So, though this is held up by cryptozoologists as an example of skepticism being a form of ignorance, the opposite is true. The skeptics if there were any, were right. Or how about this one?
The devil bird, or ulama, is a frightening horned bird of Sri Lankan folklore. This elusive creature is rarely seen, but is often heard in the form of its infamous, blood-curdling screams. Its cries are said to resemble a wailing woman and are perceived by locals as an omen of death. For centuries, the nocturnal cries of the devil bird were the only evidence of its existence. Western science wrote it off as mere superstition. Then, in 2001, the devil bird was identified as a new species of owl, the spot-bellied eagle owl.
It had the ring of truth, if you didn't look too hard. Seems almost convincing until you do a lick of research. The locals heard a terrifying screech, a sound that is more supernatural than natural, as the call is said to portend death of those nearby, or so the story went. Nobody ever saw the thing, not clearly, just shadows and shivers and the echo of a cry that didn't sound like it belonged in nature. Which, when the spot-bellied eagle was discovered, certain cryptozoologists claimed this must be the devil in question. It was a real bird, all right, but not the one from the stories, no trail of bodies in its wake, no cursed howls to chill your blood. The pieces didn't fit, no matter how hard they tried to jam them together. This is what desperation looks like, trying to peg a round hole with a square peg, throwing out all logic and reason in order to justify your beliefs, clinging to a story because it's easier than facing the facts. When belief runs dry, people start to twist the truth, squeeze it till it screams, just to keep their narrative alive. I was starting to realize that this course walked into my office wearing someone else's coat, and that coat was not flattering. Half the content belonged to strangers, lifted from websites and hours of borrowed YouTube videos. Then there were Douglas's life coaching slides, jammed in like cheap filler to stretch the clock. I came looking for a catalog of creatures, a real rogues gallery of crawlies and curiosities, but what I found was far less compelling than I had hoped. I should have known better. Douglas has not once shown that he understands the meaning of the word compelling. That's what I get for having expectations and thinking the Institute was going to meet them. Other than Douglas covering basic taxonomy, the course was a flop for me. So I moved on to the exam. Okay, so I just got a 99.6 on the exam, although I'm not feeling too accomplished, what with questions like this being on it.
Serious and professional cryptozoologists do not take blank along with them on investigations. Select one. In-laws. Conviction. Preconceived notions. Refreshments.
In-laws, the boomer dad's go-to joke. But actually, it's perfectly okay to bring your in-laws to an investigation in the woods. And here's a little tip. You can leave them there. This also applies to stepchildren.
The true scientific method is defined as the open-minded search to discover and explain reality, whatever that means and wherever that takes us. Select one. True. False.
The answer is false, but I don't want to upset the inventor of the true scientific method, so I lied. I'd still not gotten used to it. It went against my sensibilities, but it comes with the territory when you're neck deep in a course that wants the wrong answers spoon-fed and sugar-coated. You say what they want to hear, not what you know is right. And when they hand you that passing grade, it's like getting a trophy for playing the fool. I guess that's why they call it fool's gold. The exam was over, but my night wasn't. I had one last job to do. An assignment. Pick a local cryptid and file a field report. Simple on paper, in reality, dull as hell. Like writing a book report on a book that's never been written. Inspired by my night at the lake, I chose Metrosaurus, a large serpent said to live in Lake Ontario. But unlike Nessie, the Metrosaurus loves shopping and fashion and is very concerned about its heterosexual appearance, even if no one's ever going to see it. They say its skin's dark. Some say blue-gray, like a whale. Others swear it's brown, like a blue-gray whale that's brown. It's fast. Real fast, strong too, strong enough to break the surface and leap into the air like a torpedo with teeth. Something that size, pulling off a stunt like that means power, grace, danger. More likely, it was a log or a long-ass fish, maybe just a damn aquatic snake. But I wasn't actually going to go on a hunt for something that wasn't there. My interest in cryptozoology was satiated, and I found it much less captivating than any of the other subjects I had taken. Truth be told, I think I'm just itching for the end at this point. It felt like I was never going to escape. I was losing track of days. How long had it even been? A year? A decade? 5 days? It was impossible to tell. The longer I sat, The more I remembered why school always rubbed me the wrong way. Back then, they tried stuffing my head with things I'd never use, and worse than that, things I never cared to know. I forced myself to do another daily psychic meditation, but my brain was too loud for my heart to be in it, and the lights took their time, were dim when they came. And by a week into this, I was already left wanting, hungry, a lingering sense of emptiness in my gut, which is when it hit me. The gnawing in my gut wasn't existential dread or some metaphor for longing. It was just hunger. Plain, dull, human hunger. I hate to admit it, but yeah, I craved answers, sure. But I also just needed a glass of water, some protein, and my bed. If everything played out the way it was supposed to, tomorrow would be the last real day of schoolwork. The dissertation didn't count, just 10 questions and 1,000 words pretending to be something bigger. But I couldn't shake this terrible feeling creeping over me. The kind that settles in and won't leave, like smoke in your wallpaper or someone living in your walls. Maybe this is what Douglas was talking about. My higher self trying to impart some knowledge or wisdom on me. The case was winding down, pieces falling into place, but something was off. Something wasn't right. I could feel it, like a whisper behind me I couldn't quite catch, like a hand on my shoulder trying to steer me towards something I couldn't see, something just out of reach. And the more I tried to ignore it, the louder it got. "You're missing something," it said. "You're missing something." You're missing something. You're missing something. You're missing something. You're missing something. I spent the morning haunted by my own terminally naggy brain. You're missing something. Girl, shut up! And as much as I wanted to drop everything and just spend the day trying to parse out what I was missing, more than that, I wanted this all to be done with. The morning hung heavy, my thoughts gnawing at my synapses like rats in the walls. I wanted to toss the whole day aside, chase down whatever truth I was not privy to. But more than that, I just wanted this whole mess buried and gone, just like my great aunt Carol. So I resigned myself to sit down and just get the job done, finish what I started. Douglas sometimes lays it on heavy, cloying almost, complimenting the student and by extension, himself.
Being a paranormal investigator is a noble endeavor, as it shows that you are not satisfied with the status quo of accepting the world on other people's terms and with other people's beliefs.
Noble. That's a funny word for the act of thinking for yourself when what you thought for yourself was a 4-foot-tall giant alien squirrel.
Serious paranormal researchers don't do this for the money, the glory, or the fame. They do it because that is who they are and what they do. It's in their blood. They can't quit because some deep part of them yearns for answers. Even though they may get discouraged at times, they realize the importance of what they do, even if the world ignores and demeans them. This higher purpose fuels and nurtures their spirit.
Those damn alarm bells are ringing again. Same tune as always. Douglas isn't running a cult, but he's got the makings of a man who could. He's got a way about him, painting believers in the paranormal as champions of the unknown, truth chasers with the odds stacked against them, cast out by the world, spit on by polite society, underdogs with fire in their eyes. And whether he means to or not, he splits humanity in two. On one side, the ones who believe, on the other, the ones who don't. Sure, people are going to think you're silly, but what you're doing, it's in your blood. Into every generation, a cryptozoologist is born, one person in all the world, a chosen one. They alone will wield the strength and skill to fight the skeptics, debunkers, and the forces of false science. Vampire slayers trade in stakes, sharp, simple, deadly. Paranormal investigators, they show up with a lot more, a whole arsenal packed tight in one overstuffed bag. EMF meters, microphones, spirit boards, cameras, thermometers, radios, tools of the trade for anyone tenacious enough to think they're peeling back the curtain, piercing the veil between this world and the next. The professor says that haunted is just a way to describe a building or room frequented by a spirit, as in a haunted house, a completely novel concept, and these hauntings tend to begin or intensify during times of renovation or remodeling, maybe because the ghost is upset about the change in environment. New sounds occurring while you're ripping out your kitchen? If you lick it, it's ghosts. To be fair, sometimes it is ghosts, but that's in movies and on TV. In fact, it's precisely what happens in the classic episode of Are You Afraid of the Snark by Brona, but the classic episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark by Nickelodeon, but a ghost that's renting an apartment and doesn't like it much when living people try to furnish it. He says that when you're digging into a haunting, you better know what kind of spook show you're walking into. Sometimes it's residual. That's when something loud enough or tragic enough leaves a scar on the air like cigarette smoke in a closed room. It just lingers. You don't get conversation with those kinds of ghosts. They're just echoes stuck playing the same scene over and over like a scratched up record. But if the spirit starts taking on an interest in the living, moving things around, whispering your name, maybe even answering back, then you've got yourself an intelligent haunting. But how intelligent they are is actually up for debate. And that's when things start getting real personal.
Intelligent hauntings involve spirits that interact with those alive in the flesh. They can communicate in a number of ways, such as audibly, through audio recordings or other instruments. They can also react to what you say or do.
This is the kind of ghosty you can ask for a sign. A rap on the wall for yes, 2 for no. The answer comes and it's clear you're not alone. You're dealing with something that thinks, something that remembers being alive, a human spirit caught between here and the beyond. But that's not the whole story. Not every shadow was once a man. There's something else out there, something that never wore skin, something inhuman, like a ghost.
Inhuman entities never walk the earth as humans. In general usage, we will use the term intelligent haunting to refer to human spirits, and other terms such as inhuman spirit or malevolent inhuman spirit to describe inhuman spirits.
Now, human spirits, well, you treat them as humans because in their minds they are. They're still walking and breathing and feeling just like the rest of us, according to them. Emotions, thoughts, memories, all still flickering in the dark. And when you go looking for them, Douglas says you don't call it a hunt. That's not the game we're playing. You call it a paranormal investigation or research. You don't hunt people, you research them, like rats in a lab. Likewise, when it comes to spirits, when you talk about them or to them, you use the pronouns they used in life. That's respect. That's the rule. Sometimes Douglas is kind of based.
Logically, we must conclude that spirits can feel love, emotional pain, angst, frustration, disappointment, and the slew of other emotions that they experienced as humans. Widespread evidence supports this conclusion.
Citation needed. He explains that while the first objective during a paranormal investigation of a haunted location is to help the people living there, you also need to help the people who are there who aren't living. But figuring out how to help them, that's a bit trickier if you're not Melinda Gordon. Naturally, the tough part is figuring out what they're after. Sometimes a good sensitive or medium can lend a hand, though you don't always need one. Sometimes you just need a little drive and elbow grease. It's like my mom used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat and then commune with its spirit. Douglas gives an example of one investigation he completed where he helped a ghost find his way through the veil and into the light. Here's how it went. With the assistance of a medium, Douglas discovered that the haunting he was investigating was a human spirit, a man named Ed. Turns out Ed wasn't some shadowy monster or demonic force. He was just a regular Joe named Ed who built the house back in the early 60s. A man with calloused hands and pride in his work and maybe even a deep dark secret or two. But maybe not. But times had changed. The place was a rental now and the folks living there were not concerned with cleanliness. Douglas says that it was bad. Even calling it a pigsty would have been too kind. Ed was furious, his soul soaked in rage over what they'd done to the home he'd once built with love. Douglas sat with him, cool and calm, told him he got it, understood the anger, respected it even. But the truth was hard. This wasn't Ed's world anymore. The clock had run out. Douglas asked if Ed had ever seen a bright light. Ed said, yeah, we had electricity back in the 60s, but he'd also seen another light, but he didn't know what the hell it was. Douglas told him he needed to go into it. Ed hesitated. Fear can chain a man to anything, even death. So Douglas played his ace, told Ed to call out to his wife and kids. That's when the light shifted. Faces appeared, familiar, warm. His family was waiting for him. Ed's anger melted like snow covered in piss. gratitude in his eyes, he stepped into the light and vanished into peace. The house went quiet after that. No bumps in the night, no whispers from the dark, just silence. No more complaints of ghosts going forward. See, not a ghost hunt, more like a free posthumous therapy session. But that only works because this dead guy used to be an alive guy, was a human at heart. But what about the other things beyond us, the inhuman, the malevolent?
Inhuman spirits are believed to have never walked the earth as human beings. They are also referred to as angels, guardian angels, guiding angels, patron saints, and non-corporeal entities, NCEs. The term that paranormal investigators use to describe evil spirits is malevolent inhuman spirits, MIS, also known as malicious non-corporeal entities.
Now, Douglas admits that whether these beliefs are true cannot be scientifically proven, which to me is debatable, but then goes on to say that empirical data suggests that while something is definitely happening, albeit rarely, it's more likely coming from humans than malevolent spirits. But still, these little misses are often much harder to remove. He posits that's because it's not a home or object being haunted, but a person, possibly in order to feed off their energy like a vampire. But if it's a poltergeist, again, probably be on the lookout for a pubescent girl. Occam's razor, you know? Then, there's the shadow people, which many believe is literally anything you can't see clearly, even at night, even when your eyes are closed. But Douglas says are the kinds of things you see out of the corner of your eye, but aren't there when you turn your gaze towards them. Or maybe you saw something, but it was just someone astral projecting. Maybe you were just standing outside in the middle of a sunny afternoon. So clearly, there's a lot to know. And in order to determine not only what type of haunting is happening, but if one is truly happening at all, you need to not only know the types of hauntings, but know how to perform a proper paranormal investigation using all of the tools available, including your brain. But since my brain had been fried by Douglas over the last week, let's start with something less complicated. EMF meters. Those little beeping, flashing handheld devices you see in ghost hunting shows. They make a big display, good for impressing the locals, but what do they actually do? An electromagnetic field meter sensor doesn't actually detect EMFs. It actually detects any changes in them and then converts how intense those fluctuations are into a number. And that number gives you a little beep. So what does that have to do with ghosts? Well, nothing. These meters are really good at detecting electronics though. So if you're looking for your phone charger in the dark, you might be helped by waving this around behind your bed. But what do paranormal investigators say it has to do with ghosts? They think spirits produce or affect EMFs, and the meter will respond to that. Douglas doesn't seem all that convinced of their use on their own to identify a haunting, but in conjunction with EVPs, that's a better indication that something is happening. Just in case you were starting to think that something wasn't happening, something's happening. EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena, are interesting exercises in human psychology, to say the least. Paranormal investigators will record audio during an investigation and then listen back to it after. Any unexpected voices or sounds heard are considered EVP with various classifications. Douglas provided an example from his case files, which I won't play, but let's just say they were not what I'd call compelling. The human brain seeks patterns. It wants to make sense of the input it's getting, always hunting for order in the noise, for faces in the dark. But for some people, belief plays a strong role in that as well. A person exhaling becomes a spirit whispering, "Help me." An HVAC letting out a burst of air is a demon hissing. A cat hissing is a former librarian asking everyone to keep it down. A person in another room quietly saying the word believe is now a demon instructing the investigators to leave. And the ways that they go about getting these recordings is often incredibly suspect from the get-go. The worst kind of pseudoscience. The kind that doesn't even bother hiding the con. The kind that's all pseudo and no science. Take parabolic microphones, for example. This is the kind of gear gumshoes and feds keep tucked away in their arsenals. They don't just pick up whispers across the room, they catch words tossed into the wind from blocks away.
Parabolic microphones are used by some researchers who report far better EVPs as a result. These mics seem to pull the very faint Class C EVPs out of the noise.
The trouble was plain enough. Those mics were built to catch voices from a distance, and that's exactly what they did. So when a voice came through and you couldn't place where it came from, it wasn't mystery, it was design. The whole point of the thing was to pick up what you couldn't hear on your own. Nothing spooky about it. Just the machine doing what it was made to do. Sometimes the intelligent haunting is just the intelligent design of a microphone. It's a lot like putting bread in a toaster and then the second it pops saying, "Holy shit, did you see that? It moved! Nobody was touching it! At least, nobody living. And the bread has been changed. Ghost toast." Worse than parabolic mics, though, is what people call spirit boxes. These are jumped up radios that quickly cycle through AM stations, spitting out random words from random stations. Then you just assume that whatever you're hearing is a ghost and not like a collection of random words from random radio stations. The meaning you find in them is completely internal, subjective, and unfalsifiable. It's like asking ChatGPT to pump out 7 random words. Let's say, want out girl box dog stairs tree. And then divining that you're being visited by the trapped spirit of a dead girl who is buried under the stairs nearby, killed while out looking for her lost dog in the woods, and she's asking you to find her body and free her. The meaning's not in the box, it's in you. And isn't that beautiful? The answers you were looking for have been inside of you this whole time. You're the one pulling ghosts out of the static, building stories from scraps. It's not the dead talking. It's your own need to hear them. Want out girl box dog stairs tree. It all makes sense. It's like my friend Geraldine Blank used to say. Think about it. I haven't. When I signed up for this program, I signed up to do my Certified EVP Technician course. And honestly, I wish I hadn't. I'm not built to hear voices in the low hum of a fridge or spirits in the footsteps of the people in the apartment above mine. Partially because after a run-in with a couple angry men and their angrier kicks to my head, my hearing, not what she used to be. I struggle to hear people in the same room as me talking sometimes. So, the dead? They're not getting through to me that way. I'm much more likely to be able to at least see what the paranormal investigators are talking about when it comes to claims about seeing spirits or cryptids in film or on video. Which is why, during this course, I've been lurking on the Paranormal Encounters forum on an obscure internet site called Reddit. Here, people post photos and videos of encounters captured on camera. Sometimes they ask the group if it's the ghost who's the asshole or if they are. For instance, this photo here, which many on the forum thought was proof of a ghost. Where's the ghost? Well, it's the woman sitting in the room with them. According to the person who posted this photo, it was from 10 years ago, and his grandmother didn't remember that woman being there at all. And his grandmother had an impeccable memory for a 98-year-old woman who grew up breathing in asbestos and sucking on lead paint chips.
Probably some of the most compelling evidence this has produced.
Or it's a woman sitting in a room, and Buddy's Meemaw doesn't remember it. Do you remember every background character in your photos?
I actually got chills from this. This picture is very creepy, knowing that the land was a Native American tribe's burial ground and that the spirit looked like an elderly female Native American.
Same. I get chills. My eyes start to water and my eyes tear up. This is how I subjectively determine if something creepy is real.
Screaming, crying, and throwing up because there was a woman sitting behind a couch who you assume is an indigenous woman.
One of the scariest, creepiest paranormal photos I've seen.
This is classic paranormal activity. Definitely one of the best posts I've seen.
So, just wondering if this is a doppelganger or a mimic. Have you heard voices or whistles in your house?
This post circulated for 2 weeks, with people posting more and more enhanced versions of it until they were all shitting their pants, unable to sleep because they were so freaked out about how this guy had proof of the paranormal because he saw this spirit. Oh, he did? That's unbelievable. Almost as unbelievable as the plasma entity caught on camera and posted in the UFO subreddit. Why aren't more people talking about this?
Same anomalies Skywatchers have been discussing have been filmed for years. It seems that now, because the talking heads have given the go-ahead to believe, people are finally starting to accept this reality. It's very telling that this is what it takes, and honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. I hope this new information encourages people to check themselves and take the time to dig deeper before dismissing something outright.
That's a Mylar balloon, you stupid donkey. You can see the string. Once again, the lick principle in action. They're licking that balloon clean.
Once you realize JFK was not killed by Oswald, he wasn't capable of those shots with bad sights in that time frame at that angle, and if he was, the FBI sharpshooters on a range 10 times to do it, then you realize we are lied to about other issues, like the fact that every major U.S. war was started with the Boston Tea Party. We have been lied to about a very long list of facts, including everything the truth of UFOs is a great big effing deal. Afterlife has been documented countless times. There's very eerie experiences. There's an organized disinformation effort re UFOs, just as there was with JFK's connected to psychic abilities and the afterlife, CIA, etc., are in this forum to deliberately dismiss anyone's experiences.
People convinced that they are experiencing the paranormal often reject entirely mundane explanations for the phenomena that, if ignored, can lead to serious harm. For instance, someone says their house is haunted, that every time they cross the threshold, the air turns heavy. They are filled with dread, feeling a pressure on their chest, headaches, waves of nausea and dizziness. They are absolutely convinced they have a malevolent spirit attacking them. But odds are, it's not some cursed entity. It's carbon monoxide, slowly killing them, silent and unseen. The real horror is the kind you can't see and don't want to believe in. Not the kind that you can't see but want to believe beyond any shred of rationality. Try telling them that, though. You'll be painted as the cold realist, the skeptic buzzkill at the seance. Just another flatfoot with a flashlight trampling over their mystery. To them, you're not helping. You're calling them liars, meddling, mocking. So why say anything at all if all you bring is doubt? Or they're hearing voices, a dark force telling them to hurt someone, and it's absolutely terrifying to them. They don't want to hurt anyone, but every time their mother is in the room, the entity whispers for them to pick up the knife and stab her over and over again. But if you suggest that maybe they need to go speak to someone immediately about this, a doctor, not an exorcist, you get blowback, saying you're calling them crazy or attacking them. There is no room for disagreement, and all actual help is seen as not only an assault on them, but on their entire perception of reality. And the other people in the forums do nothing but push people deeper into whatever harmful belief is preventing them from actually finding real help. It's not just ridiculous, it's objectively dangerous. But they don't want to listen to skeptics, or debunkers, or people who prioritize the most likely explanation. They want to lick it, like a lollipop they just found on the street. But maybe they'll listen to me, Kaylin Conrad, certified paranormal investigator, which I'm about to be, as I've just submitted my exam. Once again, I answered the questions as I imagined Douglas would want me to, mostly because I'd fail if I didn't. But the EVP questions were much too difficult. I had no idea what I was supposed to be hearing, and I finished the exam with my lowest score yet. I didn't know there would be ear training as part of a ghost course, but I still passed, which means I just finished everything I needed, finally, to get my master's degree. Didn't take long before Douglas sent it through. I made it onto the honor roll with cum laude. Classic Kaylin. It got pinned up faster than Christ on Easter Friday, a testament to the years of hard work I'd poured into the last week. I began feeling inspired because, as far as I could tell, the worst was over. Tomorrow was the big one, the final act, dissertation day, D-Day. A second wind blew in, even though no window was open, and something in me kicked back to life. Eager to put everything I learned into practice, I quickly did my psychic meditation, packed up everything a good paranormal investigator might need, and then I hit the road, heading to the only place where the dead outnumber the living. And now we're back where we started, with me creeping around in a cemetery like I'm some corpse paparazzi, with my camera, my EMF meter, and a little something for protection that I prepared earlier, Mr. Pointy. I didn't think I'd run into a vampire, but you'd be surprised how many things a stake to the ticker could kill. Or so I hear. I haven't tried it in practice just yet. I waited for a ghost to walk or float by, or at least just be standing there, but the place stayed quiet. Too quiet. Just the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you're begging for a sound. So I started moving, slow and steady, letting the meter sing its song. A few beeps here, a couple of polite chirps there, but nothing worth writing home about. I considered singing to the ghost like this girl Poot Lovato did, but I wasn't trying to scare him off. The folks on those forums, they talk like cemeteries are supernatural hotspots. Like you walk in and Casper is waiting to give you a high five. Never made much sense to me. Why would a soul stick around some plotted dirt they never cared about when they were breathing? A place they likely never even visited when they were living? Why not linger in the place where they laughed, cried, fought, lived? Why haunt a gravestone instead of the kitchen they baked in, or the bed they shared with their lover? None of it added up, but I kept walking, just in case the dead felt like talking. It was a couple hours in when it hit me. I was, without a doubt, the only one haunting this graveyard. And once it started to rain, I decided that it was high time I went into the light. At home, I decided to treat myself, and I made a light snack. And of course, I gave the goose his due, same as always, death and taxes. I decided that giving up on today so I could start early tomorrow for my final day is precisely what I needed. The fastest path to my PhD and out of this K-hole I dug for myself. Sounded good in theory, but so did a lot of things Douglas said. But the silence was thick, too thick. All day, I'd kept the voice in my head busy with noise and nonsense. Now, stretched out in the dark, there was nothing left to drown it out. It whispered the same thing it always did. Something's off. Something's missing. You're missing something. If I had any hope of sleeping, I needed a distraction. Something familiar. So I reached for the dial. The radio crackled to life. I would have one last night with Douglas. For old time's sake.
Welcome back to the Metaphysical Human Radio Show with your hosts, Dr. Doug and Dr. Victoria. Today, we're discussing the Claires. What are they? And are you one?
That's exciting, Douglas. I'm actually 4 different Claires. And I'm going to get into every single one of them on this episode. But first, I wanted to go over...
You're missing something. You're missing something. Yeah, I get it. I'm missing something. Patience. Any interest in doing anything resembling work today? You're missing something. Yeah. Collagen. The sun clearly wasn't coming out today, and the clouds blanketing the sky made it look like a storm was coming. And it was coming hard. I made myself another Canadiano with enough espresso to give me an NDE, for research purposes, of course, and settled in to do my dissertation. Now, a traditional dissertation could be like 100,000 words, but luckily for me, I don't have to do that, because I wouldn't, not for this. Apparently, some form of dissertation used to be required by Douglas in order to receive your doctorate, but they were all so bad Douglas had to send them back to the student, which should really tell him something, but it doesn't.
It is difficult for us to reject a traditional dissertation in which a student has invested so much. Nearly every traditional dissertation submitted in the past has been returned to the student because it needed work to satisfy the grading criteria. In addition, most submitted or resubmitted traditional dissertations do not result in a perfect grade due to the stringent grading requirements. This results in a student getting a lower final program grade than if he or she had not done a dissertation.
So they scrapped him, because what's the point of getting a PhD if you have to be able to effectively communicate what you learned? Enter the doctoral degree assignment / dissertation, which is 10 questions, 100 words minimum each, all of which are mostly about self-improvement, not the specialization you're specializing in or graduating from. Douglas says that it's just easier to answer a few questions than to create, develop, write, edit, proof, rewrite, then defend and correct a traditional dissertation, which is true. But it's also much easier to get the doctorate without really learning the information that way. Good thing school isn't for learning and is really just a way for the government to make money. But whatever. As long as you can say you did your dissertation when people acquire about your very real doctorate, it's chill.
An advantage of this change in terminology and dissertation structure is that all students will be able to say that they completed a dissertation as part of their doctoral program.
I don't think I'll be saying that, by the way.
Within the context of the IMHS Metaphysics program, we think traditional dissertations are a bit outdated. They are more relevant to other areas of academic study where a student can showcase his or her research abilities and posit scientific theories. As you can likely see, this does not really apply to the IMHS degree program. However, in most cases, a $200 dissertation fee will apply.
I do agree that science, academics, and research abilities do not really apply to the IMHS program. We're not like other schools. We're non-academic. So the dissertation is graded within 24 hours, and the grade you receive on it will be your doctoral grade. And no need to panic about doing well. Because
if you think about it, looking back, you most likely received a grade of 100% on nearly every assignment and essay you wrote in your courses. With this in mind, relax and show us what you've learned. Show us how you've grown. Show us what you've got. Smiley face.
All right, Douglas, I will. Now, I want to answer these questions as honestly as possible while still appearing as though I've learned something of value from the course, which might be difficult. If you want the full dissertation, it's available on the final episode of the Members Only podcast, That's Unbelievable. I'm not reading out all 1,000 words here, but here's the meat of it.
What inspired you to get your doctoral degree in metaphysics?
In honesty, I've always dreamed of becoming a doctor, but life has always found a way to divert me towards a different course. More seriously than that, though, is that I've always been fascinated and enamored with the paranormal. Despite feeling ostracized from the wider community because I had approached it from a place that prioritizes critical thinking and evidence-based reasoning over wish fulfillment fantasies.
How have your goals and objectives changed or evolved as you've gone through the degree program?
Over the course of the program, I found myself less interested in pursuing this as an exercise in simple fact-finding, but more so as a way to better understand human emotion and psychology. I still want to learn what people believe and how they came to believe it, but now I'm also asking, but why do people believe what they believe? And how is that belief shaping their reality?
What have you learned most about yourself during this program?
I was surprised to find that during this program, I found myself surprised, as in, I thought I knew what I would learn, and I learned so much more than that. I know a word count limit hates to see me darken its doorway. There were so many moments where the level of compelling evidence supplied for some beliefs I previously found no merit in was shocking. Truest thing I've ever said to Douglas. The level of evidence he supplied was absolutely shocking.
How has your understanding of human nature and empathy for the human condition changed and evolved?
I think the most dramatic change in my understanding of human nature is how truly powerful belief is. The mind undoubtedly is extremely powerful, and what we tell ourselves actually becomes our truth. But more than that, it goes right to the root of thought itself and impacts everything from the ground up. Going forward, I'll be asking myself, is that true? Is that just what you believe? Or both?
How will you deliver greatness to the world?
Put very simply, I want to leave the world better than I found it, and I aim to do that every day for the rest of my life. With that mindset, one person's life on Earth really can change the world. You know, I actually believe that, but I believed it well before this course. And that was it. 10 questions that could all double as testimonial bait. I hovered over the submit button, expecting to feel excitement or anxiety or, at the very least, relief. But I didn't. Without ceremony, I hit the button and waited. But I didn't have to wait long. I got my letter from Douglas soon after.
Dear Dr. Kaylin Conrad, it is my pleasure to congratulate you for completing the IMHS degree program. Digital versions of your graduation documents, including a graduation letter as well as your doctoral diploma, can be downloaded. You may print it out on nice paper, such as parchment, using your printer's highest quality setting. Your printed documents will be shipped via USPS Priority Mail. Congratulations again, and I wish you the best of success in all your future endeavors.
And just like that, I was a doctor. I thought maybe I'd feel different, like after the first time I kissed a boy or after completing my first Pokedex. But I didn't feel accomplished. I felt like I was missing something. But maybe that's just how it goes. Maybe sometimes you get to the end of a story and you don't have an end to the story. Not everything gets to be wrapped up in a neat little bow. Sometimes life is more than just a story with a hero and a villain. Maybe I just needed to appreciate the journey itself, and then, like any good reporter, appreciate the privilege of getting to share that story with the world. Yeah, maybe I just needed to celebrate a little, get my gratitude and graduation on, cheer myself up. I have a few friends who completed their PhDs, so I decided to give them a call and share the good news. Hey.
Oh, hey.
I got my doctorate.
Wait, what?
How long did yours take?
Mine took like 12 years.
Oh,
what?
Mine took 10 days.
What? Hey, Kaylin. How's it going?
Just 2 doctors. By the way, how long did yours take again?
It took me 10 years.
Oh. I felt a little better, if I'm being honest. It's nice getting to connect with friends in a meaningful way. I've been kind of hush-hush about the story I was doing, other than on my private Discord for my members, where they get to follow along with my investigations as I do them. But maybe I'd update my socials, let the world know I was a doctor now, tease the story a bit. Now, when someone is choking at a restaurant, they'd be in luck, because there would be a doctor there. But they'd also be out of luck, because that doctor would be me, and I didn't study medicine, or helping people in any real tangible way. Maybe I'd even put it on my LinkedIn, right after I made a LinkedIn. I probably was definitely not going to list the school I got it from, though. I like the weight of authority it gave my words, and the Institute's credibility kind of put a dampener on that for me. Not like I thought people would actually question me about it if they saw doctor and PhD in my name. I mean, even for the doctors they're trusting to treat something serious like cancer, did people actually even ask where their doctor got their PhD? Fuck. I was so stupid. I was so goddamn stupid, walking right by it day in, day out, distracted by aliens and Bigfoot and Douglas's insistence that he was trying to make the world a better place. Stupid. Night after night, I tuned into that crackling radio show, his voice pouring out like cheap vodka, preaching about lifting the woodpile higher, about handing people the reins to their own lives. He made it sound noble. Maybe in his mind it was. But he was so sure he was helping people. I wasn't. I knew this was a bold claim for someone who was charging a fee to teach psychic powers. I knew this was, in my mind, not ethical, not justifiable, not criminal in any way, even if I thought maybe it should be. But I kept coming back to one thought. It isn't hurting anyone. Not like people selling fake medicine to people with cancer. Not like telling a grieving mother that their very dead child is still alive, opening up old wounds and giving false hope. This wasn't a scam, this wasn't a con. I was getting exactly what I paid for. A front row seat to the theater of the absurd. An education in captivating nonsense. Stupid. I was missing something, yes, because I was too close. I hadn't taken a second to step back and look beyond myself. Arrogant and self-absorbed. I was chasing a story, playing a game, working my ass off for an anecdote you break out at parties. Yeah. I'm actually a doctor, graduated recently. I minored in 4-foot-tall alien squirrels. Stupid. Of course, I wouldn't do anything to take advantage of anyone using my new status. But I could. I could leave people to believe I was more qualified than I was. I could take advantage of this PhD. The doctor in front of my name. Stupid. And I just found several graduates of the Institute, all who took one of their various energy healing programs, who seemed to be doing exactly that. On the first day, I'd seen that list of graduates, laughed that my name would be up there soon, up there next to Melinda Z, PhD, who went on to offer energy healings, angel healings, or Fred T, PhD, who convinced people with chronic pain to pay him to wave his hands near them. Book a healing Reiki session today. My name was up there next to Dr. Helen D, LMHC PhD, specializing in trauma counseling, post-traumatic stress, assault and abuse, social anxiety and phobias, and more. Book her today on BetterHelp. Fuck. I had to see what was in these healing courses, had to confirm that the Institute wasn't actually telling people that they could cure chronic illnesses with their intentions, which meant I was going to have to give him more money. Damn it. I honestly doubted that these courses had anything more than the fluff mine had, but I couldn't ethically publish the story without that information, without the whole truth. But now I felt dirty paying for these courses. I felt dirty having paid anything at all. The kind of dirty you can't just shower off. Not the kind of dirty that brings in views. I really thought I was out. I thought I was done, but you don't get to decide where the case leads you. And not following the truth is not an option. I signed up for 2/3 of the courses, but I wasn't going to do these assignments. I wasn't going to engage like I had before. I couldn't. I just needed to know. These courses were the first ones I'd encountered not taught by Douglas, but by his associate and co-host of his radio show, Dr. Vicky Hunter, who, of course, also graduated from the Institute. And did I mention? So did Douglas. How do you graduate from your own school after taking your own classes that you made? The hubris. I poured through the rest of the course, hoping, maybe even praying, that it was just more self-enlightenment nonsense, that there would be no promises for a cure for cancer or HIV or spiritual vaccine alternatives. And there weren't. Maybe it's unethical to say that if someone is stressed, you should think purple at them or whatever Vicky was talking about, but I wasn't too concerned with that. It seemed that the graduates offering healing for physical ailments had gone rogue, but I still felt like I needed to confirm. I found Dr. Vicky's personal email, and I'm going to send a message. Hi, Vicky. I'm a student at IMHS, and I've registered for the first 2 of your quantum healing courses. Really interesting material so far. I was wondering if in course 3 you discuss healing physical ailments like illnesses or injuries. That's what I'm looking for in particular. Thanks. Hope you're having a great day. Vicky replied shortly.
Hi, Kaylin. I'm glad to hear you've enjoyed the first 2 courses. As for your question, I do not address matters that require a medical license. The 3rd course addresses many different types of questions that can be asked, and how to continue to rearrange energy and/or ways to view issues people may have. Again, when it comes to healing physical ailments, I cannot make recommendations except in how we view them. I hope you also have a good day. Dr. Vicky.
Thank frickin' God. I relaxed for a bit, for the first time in what felt like days. I still felt like I was boiling over with information I needed to sort out, process, pull out of chaos and find meaning in, but I was no longer weighed down with the feeling that I was missing an integral part of the equation. I had all the data I needed to complete the equation and answer the question I'd been holding off on since the beginning of this course. Was the Institute dangerous? I came into this with preconceived notions, as does anyone, despite what Douglas might think. There is nobody who enters a situation without a thought in their head, without experience and bias and expectations. But I try to always be open to hearing the reasoning or evidence behind the beliefs presented in the courses, when any reasoning or evidence was actually provided. I was impressed by Douglas many times throughout the course. I messaged my friends about it. He came across as staunchly in favor of human rights. For instance, he laments that diversity isn't just a part of life, it's a necessary part.
Diversity is literally in our genes. And to deny this diversity by hating those not like us is nothing more than pointing a big, fat finger at our own inherent origin. To hate others means to hate oneself, and to hate oneself is an act of self-betrayal. If one betrays oneself, he or she also betrays humanity.
He touts the importance of researching technological advancements, but then condemns those advancements that harm innocence.
When we consider all of the varied types of research being conducted in the world today, we find one common, underlying motivation to most of them: to better understand and enhance the human condition. The primary exception to this is weapons or any other destruction-related research conducted primarily to harm others. I am intentionally leaving these types of research out of this discussion.
He stands against the harms religion has done to marginalize people.
Unfortunately, much of religion bears culpability for teaching that certain races, gays and lesbians, and the female gender are cursed by God and therefore inferior. Such concepts are contemptible to any informed and enlightened person. History nearly breaks under the burden of blood guilt from this source.
And he does his best to teach the importance of critical thinking, setting aside biases, and learning how to break down something complex and piece it back together logically. All of these things are incredibly necessary when you consider the audience of this program. Most of the people who take an online doctorate program will need to learn these lessons more than anyone. And given how the pseudoscience and woo-woo pipeline leads directly to the alt-right these days, his messages on diversity in an era of DEI being a dog whistle are commendable. I wonder if he's ever lost a student because he refused to keep politics out of his courses. I wouldn't be surprised if this has cost him money. His intentions truly seem to be, at least in part, making the world a more enlightened place. But intentions do not dictate impact, direct or otherwise, and we all know what the road to hell was paved with. And the Institute, its teaching methods, its coursework, and its degree program itself absolutely have the potential for an impact beyond just, in my opinion, costing a lot of money for something of little value. My first concern came about quickly, beginning with Douglas's insistence to the students that when their friends and family said the doctoral degree was suspect or not real, that they were being marginalized and denigrated. The second concern followed not long after that, with his flattery of the students, telling them that they are, quote, among the comparatively few who were not satisfied with simply eking out a day-to-day existence and ignoring the great wonder and awe that is all around us, end quote. These two things, in combination, in my opinion, serve to demarcate a line through the student's mind, to create two camps of people that exist in opposition. Those with open minds who are filled with wonder, and those who are fine slogging through life, incurious and bitter, marginalizing those who dare to dream. The paranormal investigators, they took the red pill. They're awake. While I do not believe Douglas is or is trying to run a cult, if he were, this would be an excellent way to recruit and then keep members. This is only compounded by his clear disdain for skeptics and debunkers, and more than that, science itself. He can call it mainstream science all he wants, but he throws out the entire scientific method, only to replace it with his own. You cannot say you don't have a disregard for science when you throw out a core part of what it is. He outright says that the scientific method and science itself is a, quote, close-minded belief system, end quote, while offering no evidence to support that claim. And not needing to provide any actual evidence is, in my mind, why he needs to tear down actual science and hold up his own version instead. One where, as long as you have an open mind and look for the truth, you're now performing science. And the skeptics who claim he isn't, who say that no, despite his ridiculous religious beliefs that he erroneously passes off as science, he still needs evidence for his wild claims. Well, they're, and I quote, simply negative people who demean the human condition and belittle the plight of witnesses by their thoughtless, inconsiderate, and jaundiced pronouncements, end quote. I could spend days discussing the harms associated with fostering a sense of mistrust in science as an institution. Vaccine denialism, reliance on alternative medicines that do not work, paranoia, rejection of climate change, being pushed to vote for political parties that also rail against science, and the pipeline of bigotry, hatred, and misinformation that sends you down. And I will. Just not today. I cannot see a way in which positioning so-called mainstream science as close-minded and in opposition to true discovery doesn't have a harmful impact on the person ingesting this information, and then on the world around them as they move through it. Sending graduates out into the world armed with a PhD, a freshly completed dissertation, and an us versus them mentality, with the them being scientists and their friends and family who disagree with the Institute and its teachings, what could go wrong? And then there's the final critical issue. Douglas has no control over what these graduates do after they walk out with their PhD. But does he have no culpability in the consequences? Legally, he will not and cannot be held accountable for any harm they do. But karmically? Ethically? Well, that's a bit of a metaphysical question, isn't it? I'm a bit of a consequentialist. I believe that if the actions you're taking lead to negative outcomes, then you are liable for your part in that. Now, I'm not talking butterfly effect. I drop a coin, it's picked up by someone who then uses it to make a phone call that leads to his divorce. Not my fault, not my problem. Kind of weird you'd imply it was. But I sold a doctorate to someone who is now using it to bolster their credentials on BetterHelp? Yeah, that's direct enough for me. People place trust in those with a PhD, rightfully or not. To many, it communicates that this person is not only an expert in whatever it is they're doing or selling, they have dedicated a large part of their life to this pursuit. I assume Douglas knows this, as he's not a fool. And in my opinion, this title, the aura that comes with it, that's why many people likely take these programs. I'm sure some just want to learn about Bigfoot, but they can just go watch the damn YouTube videos that constitute the bulk of Douglas's discussion on it. You don't need his courses or his degrees in order to learn about the paranormal or metaphysics. You just need an internet connection, a library, or an elder. It's indisputable, in my opinion, that someone who claims to be able to heal chronic pain using waving hand magics would have an easier time bringing in medical patients with a doctor in front of their name and a PhD at the end of it. Who do you go to when you're ill? A doctor. And when you're at your wit's end after suffering for years in constant pain with no relief, and find a doctor who promises they can help using something none of the other doctors have tried, well, desperation leads to a lot of poor choices. Poor choices that can cost you a lot, and not just money. I looked deep into the Institute, searching for any mention of their degrees, any reporting on their practices, but I didn't find it. I did, however, find something that pissed me the hell off. Wait. They just sell them? Honorary PhDs to any person who donates 1,000 or more? I could have just done that? Douglas, what the fuck? So, after all of this, can I prove that the Institute has caused harm? No. But does it have a clear and demonstrable potential for harm? I would say that with all the evidence provided and all of the rationale behind it, the potential for danger is, to quote Douglas, compelling to the point of it being all but proven. I've waffled back and forth about whether I should have spent money on this investigation, on whether it was worth it, whatever that means. And I've mostly landed on an answer. Yes. Setting aside the fact that chasing the truth sometimes requires you to drop some coin, maybe there will come a day that someone is considering signing up for a doctorate program just out of skeptical curiosity as I did. Now, they don't have to. I'm sure that Douglas would appreciate them donating that money to charity instead, given how his mission statement revolves around free will and doing good in the world. But also, what if a young, impressionable, and maybe even naive high school graduate is looking into a program only to find the Institute? Perhaps this will give them a better idea of what they'll learn. The course descriptions on the website are so sorely lacking in any details that I found it difficult to parse out what they were even about sometimes. Maybe the parents of that teen will find this video when trying to figure out if the degree is legit, or if they're questioning, like I was, if there was something harmful or dangerous about the programs offered. And for the people who were just in it for the PhD and want to know if you really receive it, yeah, I got it. Douglas sent me the official documents on real nice paper, a handful of awards, and my certified paranormal investigator badge. The school is not a scam in that it does what it says on the tin. Whether it's worth the cost for the actual PhD itself, I guess that depends on how much you value a piece of paper and a title. If you're just chasing the paper itself, I'll do you a favor. Go to my website in the description below and buy one, the imhsschool.com. They're only $199.99, but for an unlimited time, I'm selling them for $5 a pop. An amazing deal for a very real fake degree from an institution that doesn't exist. The Institute of Magical Logical Human School. I made one for Goose last night, and he seems to like it. If 220 of you buy one, I'll pay off my student loans, by which I mean the credit card I maxed out paying tuition. If you'd like something of actual value for your dollar, I'd say check out my merch. I made a bunch for this video. Or join my YouTube members or Patreon, where there's over 5 extra hours of content from this investigation alone. I filmed vlogs of all of the coursework I did, the whole time I was filming, and I made it into a podcast. That's unbelievable. The podcast where it is. You also get access to my Discord, where you can follow along with me as I do investigations. I guess I'm a doctor now, and a certified paranormal investigator. So, what's next? Well, for starters, I already have my first paranormal investigation lined up. A group of people have been making their living on telling the living that they can speak to those who are no longer living. If that's true, it's going to rock the world like nothing else ever has. But if it's not, then there are some people who have countless lies to answer for. One thing I believe is true. Douglas thinks he's changing the world, and that for $1,000 a pop, you too can learn about true science. You too can find yourself, find the truth. And that's why I signed up for his course. For all my jokes, all my, yes, ridicule, I want to know, to understand. Yes, I want to believe. In truth, I always have. I've never been able to let a story slip through my fingers. It's like a little worm in my brain that I can't get out of me. Part of me used to think I could help people too. Sometimes more than that. I had dreams of saving the world, but I can't. I can't do shit for us. I never could. No one person ever could. But I can find the truth. I'm good at that. I can cut through the bullshit, the misinformation, and shine a light on what's been obscured. I don't believe in gods, monsters, or the paranormal, but I have witnessed firsthand the harm that those beliefs can cause, from mediums to faith healers to cults to conversion therapists. In the last year, I've signed up for all of them. But I don't just want to find the truth. I want to share it with you. And there's a button on your screen that will tell you when I do. You should press it. After all, who else joined the largest cult in the world just for you? But everything in due course. And right now, I've got work to do. So until next time, I'm Dr. Kaylin Conrad, PhD, certified paranormal investigator. And this is Obscurus Investigations. See you soon.
Second-hand smoke, it's a thriller. Oh, it's gonna kill us, but I'm no quitter, no. Second-hand smoke, our little secret. Oh, we're gonna keep it. Second-hand smoke, it's a thriller. Oh, it's gonna kill us, but I'm no quitter, no. Second-hand smoke, our little secret. Oh, we're gonna keep it, 'cause it's all we know. Second-hand smoke, it's a thriller. Oh, it's gonna kill us, but I'm no quitter, no. Second-hand smoke, our little secret. Oh, we're gonna keep it, 'cause it's all we know. We're never gonna quit. So we'll take another hit now. We're never gonna quit now. We're never gonna quit. So we'll take another hit.
Grr, arg.